Hey everyone, welcome back. Tonight's video has a few really strange stories in it, and this first one is a good place to start. If you enjoy the video, give it a like and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. What stood out to me about this story is that it's coming from someone who's skeptical, someone who really doesn't believe in any of this stuff, and that usually makes a story feel more genuine to me. So with that said, let's get into it. And I hope you can relax and sleep well tonight. I'm just gonna say it straight. I still don't really believe in ghosts. I've heard all the stories, seen all the shaky videos, listened to people swear up and down that they've had paranormal experiences, and most of the time I can find some kind of explanation. That's just how my mind works. But there are two things that have stayed with me for years, and I still can't neatly file either of them away. The first one happened when I was younger. A relative of mine was secretly recording another family member on their phone. Yeah, it was messed up, I know. But that part isn't really the point. I was in the room at the time, just not paying attention to what he was doing. At some point, he lifted the camera a little higher, and at the foot of the bed there looked like there was this teenage girl sitting there. She looked maybe 15 or 16, really small, curled into herself with her knees pulled up to her chest, arms wrapped around her legs, face buried down, dark hair hanging forward and covering most of her head. She looked thin too, maybe around 120 pounds or so. What made it so strange was that the person actually on the bed was my mom, and she had a completely different build. She was also clearly visible in the video, so it wasn't like the camera was just catching her from a weird angle. And there weren't any other girls in the house. None. The only reason I still think about it is because the guy who recorded it was not the kind of person who could have faked something like that. He could barely work his phone on a good day. Editing a video would have been way beyond him. He was paranoid, always convinced he was going to catch something weird on camera. And when he saw that clip, he acted like he'd finally found proof of what he'd always believed. I still don't know what I was looking at. Maybe there's a logical answer. I just haven't found one. The second thing feels easier to explain, but honestly, it unsettled me more. One night, my brother and I were upstairs by ourselves. We were both kids, just hanging around, waiting for my aunt to get home from work because that usually meant food. She worked long hours, so a lot of the day felt like waiting for the sound of her coming in the door. Then, both of us heard her call my name from downstairs. Not vaguely, not maybe. We heard her voice clearly, like she was home and calling us to come eat. My brother looked at me, I looked at him, and we both took off down the stairs because we thought she was standing there with takeout or fast food or something. But when we got downstairs, nobody was there. I checked her bedroom first. Dark. Then the living room. Empty. Kitchen, bathroom, hallway. Every room I could force myself to look into. Nothing. The whole downstairs felt still and wrong. I remember standing there trying to make sense of it, telling myself maybe I'd missed her somehow. Maybe she was outside. Maybe there was a normal reason. Then I looked out the window. Her car wasn't there. That feeling hit me all at once. She wasn't home. She was still at work. I remember running back upstairs so fast it felt like my body moved before my brain did. My brother came right with me. Neither of us needed to say anything because we had both heard the same voice at the same time, and both reacted to it without hesitation. So no, I'm still not someone who says, yeah, it was definitely ghosts. But I can admit this much. There are a couple of moments in my life that I have never been able to explain, and they still sit in the back of my mind, quiet and unresolved. Let me tell you something that still unsettles me when I think about it. I woke up late that morning, not just a little late, but the kind where the whole apartment feels dim and distant, like the day started without you. Everything was too quiet. No traffic humming outside, no neighbors moving around, nothing. Just this strange stillness that made me feel uneasy before I even knew why. I reached for my phone, still half asleep, expecting the usual messages and random notifications. But the second I looked at the screen, I sat straight up in bed. There were 31 missed calls, all from the same number, my number. I just stared at it for a few seconds, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. I honestly thought my phone had glitched out. Maybe some weird sync issue. Maybe the network had done something strange overnight. So I checked again, slower this time, line by line. But no. Every missed call had my contact name, my exact number, no differences, no hidden digits, nothing. And I can't really explain it, but this heavy feeling settled in my chest right away. Not panic exactly, more like that quiet kind of fear that creeps in before your mind catches up. I tapped one of the calls, hoping maybe it would open into something normal, something that made sense. It didn't. It was just me, calling myself. I actually laughed once under my breath, just to break the tension. I said, "All right, that's disturbing." Then I tried calling my own number back, just to prove to myself that it was some harmless technical mess. And of course, my phone rang right there in my hand like normal. Nothing unusual, nothing supernatural, nothing helpful. So I told myself to let it go. I got out of bed, went to the kitchen, made tea instead of coffee that morning, and tried to settle into the day. But I couldn't shake it. 31 calls didn't feel random. It felt deliberate, like somebody had been trying over and over to get through to me. A little after noon, I noticed something I somehow missed the first time. There were voice messages too, 31 of them. That was the moment my stomach really dropped. I opened the list, and every message was only a few seconds long. I sat there staring at the screen, arguing with myself over whether I even wanted to hear them. But you know how curiosity works. Even when you're scared, it keeps nudging at you. So I played the first one. Just static. A soft crackling sound, like weak signal or an old radio between stations. I played the second. Same thing. Third, fourth, still static. And honestly, for a second, I felt relieved. I thought, okay, good. This is stupid. This is just some broken phone nonsense. But then I played the sixth message. It started the same way, with that low hiss. Only this time, underneath it, there was something else. Breathing. Slow, uneven, careful. Not mine. I remember leaning closer without even realizing I was doing it. My heart started beating so hard I could feel it in my throat. The breathing got clearer, and then I heard a whisper, very soft. "Answer me." I froze. Every part of me went cold. I pulled the phone away from my ear so fast I almost dropped it. That voice wasn't mine. It wasn't anyone I recognized. It sounded close, intimate even, like whoever it was had their mouth right beside the microphone. I just sat there staring at the phone on the table. I actually said out loud, No, that's not possible." But it was there. I'd heard it. I wanted to stop. I really did. But after a few minutes, I picked the phone back up and opened the last message. That one was worse. There were footsteps. Soft, measured, echoing like someone walking down a narrow hallway. Then a creak. A long, slow creak. I knew that sound instantly. It sounded exactly like my apartment door opening. "You're still asleep." I felt my whole body tense. I didn't understand what I was hearing, but I knew I didn't want to hear the rest. Still, I kept listening. A second voice came through. My voice. But it sounded wrong. Distant. Groggy. Like I'd been dragged halfway out of sleep. It said, I'm trying to get up. I shook my head right away. I remember whispering, I never said that. Then there was this sudden thud, heavy and blunt, like something had hit the floor hard. And after that, silence. I didn't move for a long time. I just sat there, phone in hand, staring into nothing, trying to force it into some kind of explanation that made sense. Sleepwalking, recording error, prank call, anything. But none of it fit. Eventually, I stood up and checked the apartment. The front door was locked. The windows were shut. Nothing was broken. Nothing looked disturbed. Everything seemed normal. But the air felt wrong. That's the only way I can describe it. Like the room had kept a secret from me. Then I noticed something near the bedroom doorway. A faint streak on the floor. Not obvious, just enough to catch the light when I shifted my angle. It looked like something heavy had been dragged across the wood. I followed it slowly, one step at a time, until it led me back to the bed. And when I looked down, the blanket was slightly pulled back on one side. Not messy, not torn up, just disturbed in a way that didn't match how I remembered leaving it. Like someone had been standing there, looking down at me while I slept. At that point, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely unlock my phone. I opened the call log again, trying to see if I'd missed anything. That's when I saw it. All 31 calls had come in between 1:12 a.m. and 2:03 a.m. But the final call wasn't marked as missed. It had been answered. Duration, 2 minutes, 41 seconds. I stopped breathing for a second. I had no memory of answering anything. No memory of waking up. No memory of speaking to anyone. My phone had automatic call recording turned on, and attached to that last call was an audio file. I knew I shouldn't play it. I played it anyway. It began with silence, then breathing. 2 separate breaths. One was mine, deep and slow, the kind you only hear when someone is fully asleep. The other was closer, sharper, right beside the mic, waiting. Then I heard my own voice, drowsy and confused. Who's there? There was a pause, a long one, and then the other voice answered. Calm, soft, so close it felt like it was speaking from inside my own head. It said, "It's me." And somehow, that was worse than hearing my name, because deep down, I already knew. It was me. So, this all started a few weeks ago, when I bought this little indoor security camera for my apartment. Nothing fancy at all, just one of those cheap ones you connect to your phone so you can check in when you're out. I set it up in my bedroom, mostly for peace of mind, and after the first couple of days, I honestly stopped thinking about it. Then 2 nights ago, something happened that I still can't explain. I was lying in bed, still awake, just half scrolling through videos on my phone, half trying to fall asleep. It was late, quiet, totally normal. Then I got a notification from the camera app that said, "Motion detected." And at first, I didn't think much of it, because of course there was motion. I was in the room. But something about the alert gave me this weird little jolt, so I opened the clip anyway. And the second it loaded, my stomach dropped. It was my room, exactly as it was. Same lamp on in the corner, same blanket twisted around my legs, same angle from the shelf where I'd mounted the camera. But in the video, I wasn't awake. I was asleep. I was lying flat on my bed, totally still. I remember just staring at the screen, then looking down at myself in real life, like somehow that would make it make sense. I was sitting there, holding my phone, very much awake, but the clip showed me asleep like 10 minutes later. I checked the timestamp 3 times because I thought maybe I was reading it wrong. I wasn't. The clip was stamped 10 minutes in the future. I actually laughed for a second, but it was that nervous kind of laugh, the kind you make when your brain is trying really hard not to panic. I told myself it had to be some weird syncing issue or a bug in the app, but my hands were already starting to shake. So I played the clip again. At first, nothing happened. Future me was just lying there asleep. Then, really slowly, the body on the bed moved. My head turned toward the camera, and then my eyes opened. I was staring straight into the lens. I dropped my phone onto the blanket. I actually flinched like the screen had burned me. Because it wasn't just creepy, it felt wrong. Deeply wrong. That face was mine, but it didn't feel like me at all. After a second, I picked the phone back up and kept watching, even though every part of me wanted to throw it across the room. In the video, I sat up in bed. Slow, stiff, almost like I was listening for something. Then I looked around the room, scanning the corners like I was searching for someone. And then my eyes found the camera again. And I smiled. I can't describe that smile without sounding dramatic, but it was awful. Too wide, too still. Like somebody had copied the shape of a smile without understanding how a real one works. It was on my face, but it looked borrowed. At that point, I kept trying to come up with a logical explanation. I thought maybe someone had hacked it. Maybe it was pre-recorded somehow. Maybe I was more tired than I realized. But nobody knew I'd even set the thing up. I hadn't told anyone. It was just this cheap little camera in my room. Then I looked at the time again, and that's when it hit me. If the clip was really showing 10 minutes ahead, then whatever I'd just watched was about to happen. I did not want to sit there and wait for that. Then I sat back on the edge of the bed and tried to calm myself down. My heart was racing so hard I could feel it in my throat. And then my phone buzzed again. Another notification. Motion detected. I just stared at it. I remember thinking, no, that's impossible. The camera was unplugged. It was in the drawer. There was no way it should have been sending anything. But I opened the app. And that second clip, that was the moment I stopped trying to explain any of it. It showed my room again, but this time the angle had changed. The camera was facing me, like it was sitting right in front of the bed, pointed straight at where I was sitting. I went cold all over. Because in the clip, there I was, sitting on the mattress, holding my phone, watching the video. Exactly what I was doing in real life. I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe properly. Then, in the clip, I lifted my head and looked directly into the camera. Not at my phone, not around the room. Straight into the camera. And then I spoke. Calmly, clearly, like I wasn't scared at all. I said, "You should have left it on." I swear to you, I did not say that. Not then, not before, not ever. My mouth in real life hadn't moved, but the version of me in that video just kept staring. Then she stood up, slowly, and started walking toward the camera. I want to tell you a story that still gives me chills when I think about it. A close friend of mine told me this himself, step by step, and even now, part of me wishes it had just been some late-night exaggeration. But the way he described it, the details, the fear in his voice, it all felt far too real. This happened a few years ago when we were both working night shifts at a call center in Noida, near Sector 63. If you have ever worked in an office that stays awake after midnight, you probably know the feeling. Everything changes at night. The bright office lights feel colder, the hum of computers seems louder, and everyone moves through the hours with that quiet, exhausted look on their face. It almost stops feeling like a normal workplace and starts feeling like a place suspended outside time. Right across from our cubicle was another one, Cubicle 27. A girl named Ria used to sit there. She kept to herself most of the time. She was polite but distant, like someone who had no interest in office gossip or small talk. Still, everyone knew who she was, because she was brilliant at her job. Week after week, her name showed up on the top performer board. My friend Aaron was the kind of person who tried to be friendly with everyone, so once in a while he would greet her. She would only give a small smile, very faint, and then turn back to her monitor. And then, one night, something changed. It was around 1:15 in the morning when Aaron noticed that Rhea had been on the same call for far too long. In our line of work, most calls wrapped up in 10 or maybe 15 minutes. But this one kept going. 30 minutes. Then an hour. Then longer. At first, he laughed it off and said she must have found the most confused customer in the world. But after nearly 2 hours, even the team lead started paying attention. Eventually, the call was monitored. What they heard made no sense. There was no customer speaking on the other end, no complaint, no voice. Nothing except a low, crackling static, the kind of hollow sound you hear on a dead line. But Rhea was still talking softly into her headset, pausing now and then, as if she were listening to someone answer her. It sounded less like customer support and more like she was deep in a private conversation. The moment the team lead stepped in and broke the call, Rhea slowly removed her headset and looked at everyone. Aaron told me that look is what stayed with him the longest. There was something in her expression that night that no one had ever seen before. Not embarrassment, not confusion, just anger. Cold, sharp anger. She didn't say a word. She picked up her bag, stood up, and walked out of the office. That was the last time anyone saw her there. At first, people assumed she had resigned. In call centers, people leave all the time, so no one thought too much of it. But after a few days, HR tried reaching out using the address listed in her records. What came back shook the whole floor. The people living at that address said a girl by that name had died years earlier. Not recently. Not a few months before. Years ago. Once that started spreading around the office, the mood changed completely. The usual chatter died down. The jokes stopped. Even during breaks, people spoke more softly, as if saying too much out loud might invite something unwanted closer. Then the strange things began. But the moment that truly broke Aaron happened much later. He was finishing some work alone one night when the computer in front of him powered on by itself. He hadn't touched it. No one had. The screen lit up, the login page appeared, and within seconds, the system signed in automatically. The ID on the screen was Rhea_27. He called me right after that. I could barely understand him because his voice was shaking so badly. Not long after, Aaron left that job and joined another company. The old office eventually shut down, and life slowly moved on. We both tried not to talk about any of it. For a while, it almost felt like one of those terrifying chapters you survive and then bury somewhere deep in your mind. But it didn't end there. One night, at exactly 2:45 a.m., Aaron got a call from an unknown number. He ignored it the first time. Then it rang again. Half asleep and irritated, he answered. He said, "Hello?" For a few seconds, there was nothing. Just silence. Then came that faint, dry static. And after that, a voice. A familiar voice. Soft, calm, professional. "Hello, Rhea, this side. How may I assist you?" Aaron told me his whole body went cold. He nearly dropped the phone. Because when he checked the number, he realized where the call had come from. It was from the same call center, the one that had already been closed down. And the part that still unsettles me the most is this. Since that night, every single day at exactly 2:45 a.m., his phone rings. Same number, same static, same voice. I want to tell you about something that happened to me in March 2022. And even now, when the night gets too quiet, it comes back to me in pieces. My friend Rashawn and I were heading back to our hometown on his bike after a long, exhausting trip. It was well past midnight by the time we left the last lively market town behind us. After that, the road just opened into darkness. Hardly any vehicles, barely any sound, just cold air and that strange kind of silence that makes you feel watched. Somewhere near a lonely stretch by the trees, a police patrol jeep pulled up beside us and signaled for us to stop. At first, I thought it was just a normal late-night check, but the way the officers looked at us after asking where we were headed, I don't know. It felt like there was something they wanted to warn us about and just couldn't bring themselves to say clearly. They asked more than once whether we really needed to take that road at that hour. One of them even told us we should stay in a lodge nearby and leave after sunrise. But we were tired, stubborn, and honestly just wanted to get home. I had something important to deal with the next morning, and Rashawn didn't want to waste time either. So after writing down our details, they let us go, though one of them quietly said, "Be careful on that road." We kept riding. The farther we went, the emptier everything became. No streetlights, no houses, nothing. Just the bike's headlamp and the road in front of us. After maybe 45 minutes, the weather suddenly changed. Rain came down hard, almost out of nowhere. We pulled over beside a small concrete bus stop to wait it out. And that's when I started feeling that something was off. I looked at Rashawn, and for some reason, his clothes didn't seem wet at all. I remember blinking a few times, thinking maybe the darkness was playing tricks on me. Rain was falling everywhere, hitting the road, splashing over the bike, soaking my shirt. But he looked completely dry. I pointed it out, half joking, half uneasy. He didn't answer the way I expected. He just told me to get moving. His voice sounded wrong. Not louder, not softer, just colder. Flat, like it belonged to someone who only sounded like him. I didn't know what to say after that. I got back on the bike and we continued. A few minutes later, we saw several villagers standing across the road, waving us down. They looked serious, almost alarmed. One of them asked where I was going, and I told him the name of my town. Then he looked at me strangely and asked, "Why are you traveling alone this late?" I actually let out a nervous laugh. I said, "Alone? No, my friend is right behind me." And when I turned around, the seat was empty. There was no one there. I can't explain to you what that moment felt like. My chest just dropped. My whole body went cold. I knew someone had been there. I had felt the weight on the bike. I had spoken to him. I had heard his voice. The villagers started asking me questions, but I could barely hear them. My mind had gone blank. Then headlights appeared behind us. A small car came to a stop nearby, and then Rashawn stepped out of it. Calm, breathing hard, but completely normal. He walked up to me and said, "Where did you disappear? You left me back near the police checkpoint." I just stared at him. He told me that after we had been stopped by the police, I had suddenly driven off before he could get back on properly. According to him, he had been stranded there and had only managed to get a ride from someone passing by. I didn't even try to explain what I had experienced. How could I? I just told him to get on the bike, and we left right away. For a long time, neither of us said a word. The road sloped upward, and the two of us were straining to move it. That was when Rashawn leaned toward me and whispered something I will never forget. He said, very softly, Does it feel like someone else is helping us push? I didn't answer, because it did. When we finally reached the top and the road began sloping down, I looked into the rearview mirror. Far behind us, I saw a figure in white walking slowly toward us. It wasn't walking normally. It looked like it was dragging something along the ground. We froze. Neither of us spoke. We just stood there, unable to move, as it came closer and closer. Then suddenly it turned and slipped into the trees on the side of the road. For a second, I thought maybe it was over. Then we saw it again. This time, it was sitting at the roadside. It was a woman. Her hair hung forward, covering her face. Next to her was a cloth sack. With slow movements, she opened it and took out something so terrible that even now I hate remembering it. It looked like the tiny bones of a child. She placed it in her lap and started rocking back and forth, crying. Not ordinary crying. It was the kind of sound that seems to crawl into your skin. It echoed through the trees and through the dark, and I have never known fear like that before or since. We stayed completely still. I don't know how long. Then suddenly she stood up. That was our chance. We started pushing the bike forward again as quietly as we could, trying to pass her without drawing attention. And just as we got beyond her, I made the worst mistake of my life. I looked back. She was hanging from a tree. I still don't know how to describe what happened to my body in that moment. It was like all strength left me at once. My hands went numb. My mouth dried up. Roshan grabbed me, and somehow, the bike started again. We rode without stopping until we reached a small village at dawn. There, we told an elderly man what we had seen. He listened without interrupting, and when we finished, he told us a story about a woman who had died on that road years earlier after losing her husband and child in an accident. People in the area believed her spirit still wandered that forest, grieving, searching, never at peace. We made it home that morning, safe, at least on the outside. But I need to be honest with you. Some nights, when I'm traveling late and the road is too quiet, I still get the feeling that someone is sitting behind me. And ever since that night, I never turn around. You know, looking back, I think it really began when I was about 9 or 10, mostly in my bedroom. At first, it was just this quiet feeling I could never explain, like something was watching me after the lights went out. I used to stare toward the top of my dresser or the corner near my closet and feel like I wasn't alone. Sometimes it even felt as though someone else was lying in bed beside me. Back then, I tried to brush it off as being a nervous kid with an overactive imagination. But little by little, it started becoming harder to ignore. I had a small TV in my room, along with an alarm clock radio. After a while, the TV began switching on by itself in the middle of the night. At first, I told myself it had to be some kind of electrical problem. But one night I woke up and saw the screen glowing with that pale, blank light. And I remember how wrong it felt. I turned it off, got back under the covers, and after that it kept happening. The radio would also blast on at random times, way louder than I ever set it. And I had this digital watch that would start beeping for no reason. Sometimes, I'd even find it in another part of the room and have no memory of putting it there. What made it stranger was that it didn't only happen at home. I remember sleeping over at my cousin's place one night and getting up to use the bathroom. When I came out, his cat suddenly leapt right onto my leg, like it had seen something before I had. As I walked back through the living room, the TV snapped on all by itself, full of static. I got such a jolt of fear that I ran straight back to bed and stayed there the rest of the night. At home, my family heard things too. There were nights when footsteps moved across the living room, even when nobody was there. At the time, my parents tried to stay calm and practical about it, probably because they didn't want to frighten me or my sister. but years later, they admitted they'd seen shadows too. Some of them even described my room as feeling strangely open, like it let things in. When I was younger, I saw dark shapes myself, and one of them looked like a man wearing a hat. What still unsettles me is that years later, my sister describes seeing that same figure, even though I had never told her about it. When I was around 14, maybe 15, I stayed over at a friend's house, and that night was unforgettable. The fire alarm suddenly started going off. My friend went downstairs, took the batteries out, and somehow it kept sounding anyway. We were already unnerved, but then his dog started acting in this deeply unsettling way, barking into empty space, charging toward a dark room, then running back and sitting stiffly in the bedroom, staring at one patch of wall like something was standing there. We didn't sleep at all. Around that same age, I was staying at a boarding school and sharing a room with 2 other people. One night I woke up and saw one of my roommates sitting upright on his bed, staring into nothing and mumbling under his breath. I assumed he was half asleep and rolled over. The next night, it happened again, except this time he was facing the door, and I saw what looked like a silhouette standing there with its back turned to me. Later on, I found out the building had once been used as a hospital during the war. The strange part is that the activity seemed to stop once our 3rd roommate came back, as though whatever it was didn't want a full room. One of the moments that stayed with me the most happened one evening while I was walking home along a dark path. Off near a hedge, I heard this low growling, and when I looked up, I saw something I can only describe as animal-like, crouched low, with glowing red eyes fixed on me. I froze. I called my dad immediately, barely able to speak. He came as fast as he could, and at some point while I was waiting, I looked away for just a second. When I looked back, it was gone. Then, maybe a month or 2 later, I saw what looked like the same thing again, only this time much farther from home. I tried to focus on it, almost like I wanted proof for myself, but the moment my attention broke, it vanished again. Later, when I was with my ex, she experienced things too, which honestly made it harder to tell myself it was all in my head. When we slept in the same bed, there were nights when it felt like something touched us. Not every night, but often enough to leave us uneasy. I remember one evening at her place while she was cooking, just a few feet away from me. I had a full plate in front of me, and without anyone touching it, it began to turn and slide slowly across the table toward me. Then it stopped. I moved closer to her because I genuinely thought I might be losing it, but then I saw her face change. She was looking past me, completely frozen, and then the plate shifted again. That same night, her dog woke us up barking wildly into the room for no clear reason. There were smaller things too, but somehow those almost got under my skin even more. One time at my place, I was lying in bed and felt someone slowly pulling my blanket down. I could feel the fabric sliding off me, inch by inch, and I had to grab it and pull it back over myself. My mother once thought she saw me in the living room and even spoke to me, only to realize she could hear me snoring in my bedroom at the exact same time. There were also moments when I was home alone and heard noises coming from my sister's room, as though someone were moving around in there. My ex heard those sounds too. At one point, my mother talked to me about something she called closing the third eye. She told me that when she was young, she had experienced strange things too, and she believed some people were simply more open to them. Over time, I think I did shut a lot of it down, whether on purpose or not. During those experiences, I always felt the same physical reaction: chills, tingling, that electric feeling moving through my body before anything even happened. Now I'm an adult, and I've been living in my own apartment for several years. It's much quieter than it used to be. Every now and then, I still hear footsteps or a door eases open on its own, but it's rare now, and nowhere near as intense as it once was. My girlfriend has mentioned hearing odd sounds too from time to time. And the strangest part of all is this. My parents told me that after I moved out, the activity at their house seemed to stop completely. So whatever it was, or whatever all of this meant, it always felt like it was somehow tied to me. I've never really been able to explain this in a way that makes it sound normal. So I'm just going to tell you exactly how it felt. The first thing happened when I was about 7. My parents had gone out for their usual Friday night dinner, and I was at home with my older brothers and my sister. I was the youngest, so everybody treated me like I was little until it was inconvenient. And then suddenly, I was old enough to do things myself. We were all in the kitchen eating ice cream, and I needed something to wipe my hands. I asked one of my brothers to grab some wet wipes from under my parents' bed, because that's where they kept all the random kid stuff. He told me to get them myself. Their room was just up the stairs, down the short hallway, nothing dramatic, maybe half a minute away. So I ran up there, switched on the bedroom light, knelt down, grabbed the wipes, and as I started opening the package, I heard it. It was a woman's voice coming from my parents' bathroom. Not loud, just this low, aching groan. The bathroom doors were shut, the lights were off, and I absolutely knew, nobody had gone in there. Then I turned to leave, and I heard the voice whisper my name twice, very slowly. What scared me most was that even though it came from the bathroom, it also felt like it was right beside my ear. I screamed and ran back to the kitchen. Every one of my siblings was still there, exactly where I'd left them. Nobody had moved. My brother believed me right away and thought maybe someone had broken in, but he was only a teenager himself and, honestly, terrified. He grabbed a kitchen knife, bundled all of us into my parents' office, and we hid under the desk for what felt like forever. We stayed there until my parents got home. They checked everything, and there was no sign that anyone had been in the house. That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. A couple of years later, while our house was being fixed up, we moved into an older rental townhouse for about a year. That place felt wrong from the beginning. I had a room in the basement near the garage door, tucked away from everyone else, with only a tiny bathroom nearby. I hated that bathroom. The light flickered, the doorknob would rattle sometimes, and I avoided it whenever I could. One night, I woke up needing to use the bathroom. I turned on my bedroom light, opened the door, and something rushed past so fast I barely had time to process it. The only way I can describe it is like old television static, gray and black, moving all at once. I slammed my door shut and just stood there, shaking, my back pressed against it. I waited as long as I could, then finally bolted upstairs, turning on every light I passed. The next day, I realized my baby blanket was missing. It had been made for me by my grandmother, and by then it was so worn down it was barely more than a scrap of fabric, but I loved it. I kept it hidden in my pillowcase and never moved it. I searched everywhere. I found it that night while helping my mom clean out a shoe closet. It was shoved behind a storage bin, in a place I never would have put it. Stuff like that kept happening. My siblings shared an old pickup truck, and one week, the keys disappeared. Everyone was frustrated, and after days of looking, my mom found them in the very top drawer of my dresser. The thing is, that dresser was tall enough that I could barely reach the middle drawers, let alone the top one. To this day, people joke that I must have hidden them, but I didn't. I know I didn't. And the whole time we lived there, I always had the same feeling, like something was following just a step behind me. When we finally moved back into our original house, I thought I'd feel safe again. Instead, it got worse. Sometimes I'd wake up on the floor near my bed, or curled up close to the door. I'd never sleepwalked before that, and after a while, it stopped just as suddenly as it had started. There was also this hallway in the house that everyone called the Dark Hall. It led past the laundry room and a couple of storage rooms. The wiring in there had always been bad, so the lights never worked for long, and eventually, we just stopped trying. One evening, my brother and I were going to my sister's room to tell her dinner was ready. As soon as we reached the entrance to that hallway, both of us froze. At the far end stood a man. He looked tall, broad-shouldered, and he was wearing what looked like a cowboy hat. We both saw him. I know we both saw him because I screamed and ran upstairs, and when I turned around, my brother wasn't behind me. I ran back down and found him on the floor, sobbing. He still remembers it. Even now, he refuses to go near that hallway alone. The last thing that really stuck with me happened when I was a teenager. A few friends and I were in the basement messing around, playing one of those silly ghost games kids dare each other to try. Nothing happened, and we were laughing about it, so I went into the bathroom right afterward. The second I hit the light switch, all 4 bulbs blew at once. Not just burned out, burst. Glass popped everywhere. It scared me so badly I just stood there frozen. Even now, whenever I go back to my parents' house, I still get that same feeling. Like I'm being watched. My siblings say the house feels off too. Most of them never saw anything clearly, but they all felt it. And I know how this sounds when I say it out loud to you. I really do. But when you live through something like that, when it follows you from one house to another and leaves that feeling sitting in your chest for years, it's hard to shrug it off and call it nothing. Some places hold a kind of silence that doesn't feel empty at all. That house was one of them. I want to tell you about something that happened to me and my girlfriend one night, because even now, I still cannot fully explain it. A while back, the two of us shared a bottle of wine at my apartment, and like we often did, we decided to go for a walk once we'd finished it. We lived in a small apartment complex arranged in a loop, almost like a little cul-de-sac, with a larger building in the center and a few smaller ones around it. We never wandered far, especially that late at night. It was just the two of us, a little tipsy, walking under dim lights with the woods stretching behind the buildings. Before we went outside, we had been having a heavy conversation. It was not a fight, but it was emotional, and it had brought up some old pain for her. I did not think much of it at the time, but later it started to feel important. At first, the walk was completely normal. We were talking, laughing, and trying to shake off the mood from earlier. At one point, I started walking backwards so I could look at her while we talked. We had made it a decent distance from my building and were near another one with a small, shadowy parking area behind it. That lot was always dark, barely lit, and usually empty except for 1 or 2 cars. Then, from that darkness behind her, I heard a woman's voice say, very clearly, "Hello." At first, I was not frightened. I honestly assumed someone else was outside doing the same thing we were, just out for a late-night walk. I lived in a safe area, and I had walked there alone many times at night without ever feeling uneasy. So I looked up, trying to find where the voice had come from, but I could not see anyone. I was not wearing my glasses, which did not help, but still, I expected to spot a person. I answered back. Twice, actually. Just a casual hello, like you would if someone greeted you in passing. This all happened very fast. So fast that my girlfriend had not even had time to ask why I stopped. She had not looked behind her yet. But when she finally turned around, everything changed. We stood there for only a few seconds before she suddenly ran. I did not know why. I just knew something in her face told me to run too. We made it back to the steps outside my building, both of us breathless. That was when she told me what she had seen. She said something in the darkness had turned its head and looked at us. She described it as painfully white, almost the color of a freshly painted wall. Thin, tall, too long in every way. Long arms, long legs, long fingers. She was shaken, and once she said it out loud, I felt that fear hit me too. We went back inside immediately and started trying to make sense of it. She found things online about people being more open to strange experiences when they are emotionally vulnerable. That idea got under our skin, especially because she had already been going through something for a long time, something unresolved that had weighed on her for over a year. She began to wonder whether that pain had somehow made her vulnerable, like she had drawn something to her without meaning to. And because I had heard the voice too, she wondered whether whatever this was had started reaching beyond just her. I did not know what to think. Part of me has always wanted to believe in the paranormal, but the truth is, I am naturally skeptical. I have had moments in life that felt strange, sure, but most of them could be explained if I looked at them closely enough. This one felt different because it was not just me. I heard something. She saw something. We both reacted to the same moment, and that is what made it hard to brush aside. For a long time, I let it sit there as one of those stories I could not solve. Then, months later, it came back. By then, we had moved out of that apartment and mostly stopped talking about what happened. Life had gone on. The fear had faded. But after we relocated across the state, I left for a couple of weeks to visit family in North Carolina. While I was away, she stayed with a friend for a bit while we prepared for another move. That was when she finally told me something she had kept to herself. For about a week, she said, someone had been watching her through the living room window at night. Every evening, she would notice a figure standing there just beyond the glass. She could never make out a face, only a dark shape, a shadow. She had not told me right away because, by the time she brought it up, it had stopped happening. That terrified me in a way the first story had not. Maybe because this time I was far away and there was nothing I could do. Nothing feels worse than hearing that someone you love may have been watched, maybe even stalked, and not being there to protect them. Naturally, my first thought was that it had to be a real person. That is the logical explanation, and honestly, it still may be. But after I reread everything that had happened that first night, I started to feel that old unease creeping back in. The timing, the silence, the way it stopped as suddenly as it started, it all left me unsettled. Then, a few days later, she mentioned one more thing. She said she caught something peeking around a corner at her from the edge of her vision. She only saw it for a second, but she said the one detail that stood out was the color. White. That was what made my stomach drop. Because that was the same detail she gave me the night by the parking lot. So that is where I am with it. I do not know whether what happened to us was a mix of alcohol, fear, and imagination. I do not know whether she is dealing with something psychological, something physical, something spiritual, or something much more ordinary but still dangerous. I just know that what I heard felt real. What she saw felt real to her, and the way it all keeps circling back has made it hard for me to dismiss. I am still trying to understand it, and maybe I always will be. I want to tell you about something that's happened to me twice now, and both times it left me with that same strange, heavy feeling. Like, maybe a dream can be more than just a dream. The first time was after my boyfriend's grandfather passed away. My boyfriend and I have been together for nearly 10 years, so his family has felt like my family for a long time. We used to visit his grandparents often, and I knew his grandpa really well. My boyfriend was especially close to him. He was named after him, and honestly, he was the center of his grandpa's world, his favorite grandson without question. When he died, my boyfriend took it incredibly hard. We handle grief in very different ways, but I could see how deeply it shook him. I never told him about the dream I had soon after, because at the time it felt too intense and too personal to bring up. In the dream, we were all at his grandma's house together. The whole family was there, cousins, aunts, uncles, everyone. It felt so ordinary at first. We were eating breakfast, walking from room to room, just doing those random dream things that somehow still feel familiar. But throughout all of it, his grandpa kept appearing. Every time he showed up, it startled me. Not in a violent way, just in that eerie dream way where someone suddenly feels so present it almost knocks the air out of you. He never spoke, not once. But I could feel that he was focused on my boyfriend. He would appear close to me, but his eyes were never really on me. He was looking past me, straight at him. A few times I tried to go up to him, to say something, to understand what was happening, but he would just move through me and keep going toward his grandson. That's what stayed with me. It didn't feel like he was there for me at all. It felt like I was just somehow witnessing a moment that was meant for someone else. Then last night, it happened again, but with someone completely different. I had a dream about my ex-boyfriend's younger brother, Ty. I haven't been with my ex in about 10 years. That was all high school. His brother passed away around 5 years ago, and even though he wasn't my family, we were genuinely close back then. He was my chemistry lab partner. We used to eat lunch together. We bickered like siblings. He really felt like a little brother to me for a while. After I graduated, though, life moved on and we never really stayed in touch. When he died, I was devastated. He was such a sweet kid. In the dream, I was out shopping with my boyfriend, getting things for our baby girl. I'm 39 weeks pregnant right now, so that part made perfect sense. Then this guy walks up to me all cheerful and says, "Hey, how've you been?" And I just stared at him. I was completely confused, trying to understand what I was seeing, because it was Ty. And my first thought in the dream wasn't even fear, it was disbelief. Like, wait, how are you here? I remember trying to talk myself out of it, thinking maybe I had the wrong person, maybe he just looked like him. But then we started talking, and it was definitely him. Same energy, same familiarity, same easy way of speaking. We caught up for a minute, just briefly, like running into someone you haven't seen in years at a store. And then that was it. The moment passed, and I went back to shopping. It was such a small interaction, but it stayed with me all day because it felt so vivid. That's the strange thing about dreaming of people who've died. It can feel so real, almost like you got a tiny piece of them back for a second. Just enough to say hello. Just enough to leave you wondering after you wake up. Neither of these people were mine in the most direct sense. It wasn't my grandfather. It wasn't my brother. And yet somehow, I'm the one who dreamed of them. My own family members who've passed have never visited me in dreams like that. So why these two? Why did I get these moments? Maybe it was just my mind processing old grief and old connections. Maybe pregnancy is making my dreams more vivid and emotional. Or maybe, in some quiet, mysterious way, these people really were passing through, just letting me see them for a second. I honestly don't know. I just know it felt real when I was there. And sometimes, that feeling is the hardest part to explain. I want to tell you about the house I grew up in, because even now, when I think about it, I still get that same strange feeling in my chest. My childhood home was very old, built sometime in the early 1800s, and there had been so many people living there before my family ever arrived. From the beginning, the place never felt fully settled to me. It was not loud or dramatic all the time, nothing like that. But there was this constant feeling that someone else was there with us. I would catch movement out of the corner of my eye, little shadowy shapes slipping past doorways, and I always felt watched. Back then, I told myself it was just my imagination. I was also a pretty odd kid, honestly. I loved spooky things, and I used to terrorize my younger sister by pretending I had ghost friends who followed me around the house. I would chase her from room to room and whisper creepy things just to scare her. One of those so-called imaginary friends was a girl named Madeline. I always described her the same way: long, light hair, very pale skin, and a white dress. At the time, I thought I had made her up. Now I am not so sure. The first story is actually my mom's. She told me that one night she had a dream about the exact same girl I used to talk about. In the dream, Madeline was standing in the upstairs dining room, completely still. My mom said the moment she saw her, she felt this deep dread, like something was very wrong. She walked closer and closer, and the nearer she got, the more frightened she felt, until she suddenly woke up. She was so shaken that she had to look around the room just to make sure no one was really there. Of course, it was empty. But what happened later scared her even more. Another night, she woke up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. The moon was bright enough that it lit the upstairs hallway in this cold, silver glow. She stepped out of bed, looked down the hall toward my room, and there, standing right outside my door, was the same girl, Madeline. Just standing there, facing my room like she wanted to come in but could not. At first, my mom thought it was my little sister, so she started walking toward her and called out her name. There was no answer. Then that fear hit her all at once. Her whole body went cold, the hairs on her arms stood up, and she knew something was wrong. She kept moving closer, and then, just like that, the girl vanished. Completely gone. My mom rushed into my room, and I was fast asleep in bed. Then she checked my sister's room, and she was asleep too. For years, my mom tried to explain it away, thinking maybe she had still been half asleep or somehow imagined it. But when she finally told me the story much later, it terrified me, because the girl she saw looked exactly like the one I had described as a child. And that was the moment I started asking myself whether Madeline had ever really been imaginary at all. The second story happened to me when I was older. One night I was home alone, looking after the cats. One of them was curled up on my bed, and I left my bedroom door cracked open so she could wander out if she needed food or the litter box. I was lying there scrolling on my phone while she cleaned herself at the foot of the bed. Then, all of a sudden, she froze. Completely froze. She stared straight into the dark hallway outside my room. I remember my heart pounding, but I still made myself get up and look. I know, not my smartest moment. I should have been worried about an intruder, but instead, I grabbed a small statue I kept nearby, whispered a quick prayer, and stepped into the hall. The second I did, my cat relaxed, just instantly. She lifted her head, blinked, and acted like nothing had happened. And when I looked out there, I saw absolutely nothing. Still, I was too rattled to ignore it. I grabbed something sharp from my room, turned on every light I could find, and checked the whole house. Every room, every corner. Nothing. No person, no animal, no sign that anything had been there at all. But I know what I saw in my cat's face, and I know how frightened she was. Whatever had her attention that night, it was real enough to her, and that was enough to keep me awake. The next day, when my mom asked why all the lights had been left on, I just told her I must have forgotten to switch them off. I never told anybody what happened that night. Not my family, not my friends, no one. So in a way, you are the first person I have really shared it with. And honestly, these are only two of the stories. There are more. A lot more. So, I've lived in this house for almost my whole life. We moved in just after I turned 3, and I'm 16 now. For as long as I can remember, this place has felt off. Not all the time, not in some loud, dramatic way, but in that quiet, creeping way that makes your skin prickle before your brain can explain why. One of the first things I remember happened when I was about 8. I was in my top bunk, trying to drift off. The room was dark, and I was lying on my side facing the wall when I heard this faint creaking behind me. Then a soft little tap. I was already a nervous kid, so I turned over straight away. And there it was. My wardrobe door was slowly hanging open. I just stared at it. I hadn't touched it. Nobody had come in, and I'd never seen it do that before. These days I keep the handle tied shut because I still don't trust it. Another night, in that same room, I was sitting on my bunk playing on my tablet when I heard something scraping against the wood under me. Not a tiny noise either. It sounded deliberate, like fingernails dragging across the frame. I leaned over and looked underneath, expecting to catch my dog or maybe see something stuck there, but there was nothing. The whole room felt wrong after that. Not watched exactly, just occupied. Then there was the morning I woke up because I could feel one side of my mattress lifting. Actually lifting. I was still half asleep at first, but the second I realized what was happening, I froze. The room was completely silent. I stayed still, barely breathing, because I thought that if I moved, whatever was there would know I was awake. After what felt like forever, probably 20 seconds or so, I mumbled, "Nia, it's too early. Go back to bed." Nia is my sister. The second I said it, the mattress dropped back down. Just like that. No footsteps, no door, nothing. I sat up so fast my heart was pounding, and the room was empty. I also had this doll back then. I know how that sounds already. One night I had this awful dream where I was sitting on the floor near my bedroom door, and I looked across the room at the doll on my toy chest. Its eyes were rolled back, but somehow it was still staring right at me. Then it tipped forward and hit the floor. I woke up, actually yelled, and when I looked over, the doll was on the floor. Maybe it had just fallen. Maybe the dream picked up on a noise in my sleep. But I never really got over that one. A couple of years later, after my older sister Eliza moved out, I took her room. We called it the green room because the walls were painted this weird, mossy shade. The activity there wasn't constant, but it was strange in a different way. I was probably 10 or 11. One night, my best friend, I'll call her Emma, was sleeping over. We were lying on the bed talking about school and all the usual nonsense, just laughing and gossiping, when she suddenly went quiet and said she'd seen something move past the little window panel above the door. I looked straight at it, but I didn't catch anything. Still, the atmosphere changed immediately. We both felt it. We barely slept that night, and neither of us wanted to put a foot on the floor. That room always had tapping in the walls, too. Loud tapping. Not like pipes, and not like somebody moving around in another room. It sounded close, like it was inside the wall right above me. Sometimes it would come in a slow pattern, then speed up and stop dead. It only ever happened at night. I've started hearing it again recently, which I hate. I used to see the curtains shift in there too, even with the windows shut and no fan running. A few years after that, I moved into the room I'm in now, the purple room. Yes, the walls are purple, so that's what everyone calls it. This used to be Nia's room. When I first moved in, random things started falling over. Not things stacked awkwardly, not stuff on the edge of a shelf, just objects suddenly tipping onto their sides for no reason. It wasn't violent, just unsettling enough to make me stop and stare every time. One night, my cousin was staying over. I got up to use the bathroom, and when I came back out into the hallway, I got that horrible feeling again. The kind that makes you stop walking without meaning to. I looked toward the stairs and heard what sounded like bare feet running across the downstairs hallway. Quick, light, slapping footsteps on the floor. Everyone in the house was in bed. I ran back to my room, and my cousin and I did the world's least heroic thing and armed ourselves with whatever we could grab. Then we actually went downstairs and searched the place. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. We ended up back in my room with the door blocked, still clutching our ridiculous makeshift weapons. More recently, one of my best friends, Ren, slept over. We'd turned the lights off and were settling down to sleep. I rolled over to say something to her, and I swear I saw her facing me, just lying there completely still, looking straight at me. But her eyes looked wrong, like dark, empty pits. I asked, "Ren, are you staring at me right now?" And from behind me, or at least from the other side of the room, she said, "No?" Her voice sounded normal. The figure hadn't moved. I switched on the light, and Ren was turned the opposite way, wrapped tightly in a blanket. There was nobody looking at me. I still don't know what I saw. Another time Ren stayed over, only a few months ago. I was on a mattress on the floor, and she had the bed because she refused to sleep on the floor. It was nearly 4 in the morning, that horrible hour when everything feels thinner somehow, and we were just about asleep when we heard 2 footsteps come right up to my door. And then one massive thud, like somebody had jumped and landed just outside it. My dog wasn't upstairs. My family was asleep. We both heard it. We didn't open the door. There have been other things too. I've heard what sounds like an animal, maybe a dog, racing around upstairs when both our dogs were downstairs. I've heard footsteps on the stairs when nobody was there. I've caught shadows moving in the corners of my vision and turned too late every single time. At this point, I don't really need convincing. I know how it sounds, and I know people can explain away 1 or 2 incidents. But when you've lived somewhere that long, you start to recognize the difference between a house making noise and a house feeling alive in the wrong way. Lately, I've been hearing scratching in the attic too. We've got rat repellent up there, and there's no easy way for anything big to get in. Still, at night, I hear it. Scrape, scrape, scrape above my ceiling. And honestly, that's the part that gets me most. I want to tell you something deeply personal, something that stayed with my family for years and slowly changed the way I think about faith, mystery, and what might exist beyond what we can explain. I grew up in a Muslim family that originally came from Burma, though I was raised in Australia. As I got older, especially after being drawn towards science and questioning everything around me, I drifted away from religion. For a long time, I called myself an atheist, but lately, something in me has been shifting. I have not been pulled back toward one religion in particular, and I am not trying to force myself into old beliefs. It is more that I have started wondering whether there is a greater presence beyond human labels, a God who is not confined to one path, one tradition, or one name. A God who sees every person with the same mercy. Maybe that is why this story matters so much to me now. This happened when my mother, whom I'll call Miriam, was around 7 years old. Her little sister was about 5. They were part of a large family living in a humble wooden house inside a small enclosed compound where several Muslim families lived side by side. There were only a handful of homes there, close enough that everyone knew one another well. The adults spent evenings talking outside, and the children ran around together until it was time to settle down. Each evening, the neighborhood children would gather in my mother's house, which was one of the bigger homes in the compound. They would sit together and recite surahs from the Quran. It was a quiet, familiar ritual, something simple but full of meaning. And then, during those evenings, something strange began to happen. As the children started praying, 2 figures would appear in the room. One seemed taller, the other smaller. They would enter silently and stand near the wall as if they too had come to join the prayer. But this is the part that unsettled everyone. The figures themselves could not be seen. The only visible thing about them was what they wore on their heads. 2 prayer caps, floating where their bodies should have been. That was all the children could see. Just the caps. And it was not one child saying this. It was all of them. My mother, her younger sister, her brothers and sisters, and the neighboring children too. Around 15 children in total, from the very youngest to the early teenagers, all said they saw the same thing. 2 unseen beings arriving at the start of prayer, standing quietly by the wall, then leaving once the recitation was over. Not one adult ever saw them. You can imagine what that did to the families. The story spread quickly through the compound. Some were frightened, some fascinated. Many believed the visitors were jinn, the unseen beings spoken of in Islamic tradition. There was an old well just outside the main gate, deep and rarely approached casually, and people began to whisper that the beings might have been connected to it, perhaps even watching over it. Then, sometime later, that well was filled in, and the land around it was changed for new houses. After that, the visitors stopped coming. The children never saw them again. I know exactly how this sounds. Even hearing it as an adult, I wrestle with it. Part of me still searches for a practical explanation. But what has always stayed with me is the consistency. This was not a dream one child had. It was not a rumor built from one frightened imagination. So many children remembered the same detail, the same 2 presences, the same silent arrival, the same silent departure. That is the part I cannot easily brush aside, and maybe that is why I still carry it with me. I am not sharing this to prove anything to you. I am sharing it because it left a mark on me. It made me question whether the world is really limited to what we can touch, test, and explain. It made me wonder whether there are realities that move quietly beside us, unseen but present. And if that is possible, then perhaps it is not such a leap to believe there may also be something greater still, something vast, compassionate, and beyond all the boundaries people try to place around it. That is what I keep returning to. Not certainty, just openness. And sometimes that is where belief begins. I want to tell you about something that still unsettles me when I think about it. A while ago, I came across a video explaining that when someone is close to death, they might see a figure people call the Grim Reaper. The video did not actually show what that figure looked like, and since I grew up Hindu, that image was never really part of my world. So out of curiosity, I looked it up myself, and the second I saw it, I froze. Because I felt this deep shock of recognition, like I had seen something like that before in real life. I just could not remember when. Then last night, everything started coming back to me. My parents, my younger sister, my grandmother, and one of my father's old family friends were all sitting together in the living room, sharing ghost stories. My grandmother has always had so many strange experiences, mostly involving what she believes were spirits or witches. She told us about something that happened to her when she was little, something that scared her so badly she slept beside her parents for weeks afterward. When she finished, my father looked at me and said, "Didn't you go through something similar once?" I remember just staring at him, completely confused. I told him no, because honestly, I did not remember anything like that. But then my mother joined in. She said there actually had been a time when I got so frightened that I ran into their room in the middle of the night, crying and pointing toward the open doorway. She reminded everyone that when I was around 7 or 8, I used to watch a lot of horror videos on YouTube, most of them fake, obviously, but still enough to fill a child's mind with fear. She said I got so shaken after that night that she banned YouTube for me for almost a year. The strange part is, I had no memory of that at all. Later that same evening, I was feeling restless, so I started going through old pretend videos I had recorded as a kid on an old iPad. They were silly little clips from our old house, and then I found one that made my whole body go cold. In the video, I was sitting in near total darkness, with only a dim amber nightlight glowing in the background. I remembered those lights instantly. We used to keep them in different rooms around the house, and in that recording, little me was talking very seriously about a dark figure that followed me during the day and then sat quietly in the hallway at night, facing the wall, almost as if it did not want to frighten me. That detail chilled me. I stopped the video almost immediately. I tried to go to sleep, but I couldn't. My mind kept pulling together all these scattered pieces. What my parents had said, the image of the Grim Reaper, that old recording, all of it. And then, I finally remembered where it had begun. When I was about 5, I went to a small school in a military area of the city. Army buses, Air Force vehicles, men in uniform, all of that was just part of the background there. One afternoon during dispersal, I slipped out of my mother's hand and ran toward the road without thinking. A bus was coming straight toward me. Before anything could happen, a serviceman grabbed me and pulled me back just in time. After that, I started seeing it. A tall, dark figure in the house. It was not always doing anything. Most of the time it just seemed to be there, quiet, watchful. I used to see it often, especially at night. And somehow, as a child, I felt like it was choosing not to scare me, which is such a strange thing to say now, but that is exactly how it felt. It stayed a part of my life for years, but this time, it was different. This time it was standing, and it was looking directly at me. I still remember the face. The eyes were red, swollen, wet, almost as if it had been crying. And its mouth was open in this twisted, unnatural way that terrified me so deeply I could not even scream at first. Then I ran to my parents' room sobbing, and after that, it stopped. Just like that. I never saw it again. Even now, I do not know what to make of it. Maybe it was childhood fear. Hello everyone watching the Paranormal M channel. Welcome back. This is the place where we share real paranormal experiences. And yes, this is honestly my favorite part of the day, getting to hang out with you and help you sleep a little better every night. Thanks so much for supporting the channel and for sending in all your stories. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Alright, let's get into today's paranormal experiences. Good night. Hey. So this is something I don't tell a lot of people, because it sounds like the kind of story that makes you pause and wonder if the person saying it is okay. And honestly, I've wondered that too. When I was little, my family swears I used to talk to someone who wasn't there. I'd sit in my room and chatter away like I had company, and I'd tell them I was talking to my granddad, Papa, who had already passed from cancer. I don't really remember doing that, not clearly, but they do. They all do. What I do remember are the other moments, the ones that stuck like burrs. For context, I did see a psychiatrist later on. What I was experiencing got labeled as hallucinations, and I was put on medication. It helped, like it turned the volume down on whatever was happening in my head. I've been off the meds for about a year now, and it's mostly quiet these days. But the thing is, some of what I saw back then felt way too solid, way too real to shrug off as imagination. And maybe it didn't help that I grew up in Nova Scotia. If you've ever lived there, or even just visited, you know people tell ghost stories the way other places talk about the weather. The woods are old. The fog is thick. Even on a normal day, it can feel like the world is holding its breath. Anyway, there's a cemetery not far from where I grew up. close enough that an 11-year-old could bike there after school without it being a whole, big adventure. I had this beat-up mountain bike I was obsessed with, and I'd ride out there with my backpack stuffed with sketchbooks and pencils. I didn't have many friends. Drawing was safe, quiet. So was the graveyard. It sounds strange, I know, an 11-year-old choosing a cemetery as their hangout spot, but it felt peaceful. Nobody bothered me. The air was still. Sometimes I'd sit near the older stones and talk to myself while I sketched, like the place could hold my secrets without laughing at them. Then one afternoon, I rode up like I always did, and I wasn't alone. I saw a woman near one particular plot, standing with her back to me. She was in a wedding dress, this long, white dress with a train that dragged across the ground. Except it had rained the day before, and the cemetery was muddy, and yet her dress was spotless, like it didn't belong to the world around it. She was pale, thin, not in a sickly way, more like she was made of moonlight. And she wasn't wandering randomly. She was fixed on that one spot, like she was searching for someone who never arrived. I remember my stomach dropping. Not because she looked scary at first. She looked almost beautiful, in this eerie, wrong place kind of way. But I was shy with strangers. A stranger in a graveyard, alone, in a wedding dress? My brain immediately went, leave right now. So I did what nervous kids do. I decided to slip away before she could turn around and talk to me, ask where my parents were, ask why I was there. I watched her shoulders start to shift, like she was about to face me, and I panicked. I jumped on my bike and pedaled toward the gate. And I know this sounds dramatic, but I swear on everything. I looked back after only a few seconds. She was already at the gate, just standing there, watching me ride away like she'd been waiting for that moment. And that's when I saw her face, or what was supposed to be her face. It wasn't right, like it was unfinished, like someone started painting it and then stopped. I can't tell you the shape of her nose or her mouth because my brain refuses to fill in the blanks, but I remember the eyes. They were there, and they weren't. They felt hollow, not angry exactly, just empty. Like looking into a house where no one lives anymore, not walking, jogging, after me. I didn't wait to see more, I just went. I pedaled so hard my legs burned, and I didn't stop until the graveyard was far behind me, and my lungs felt like they were ripping. I didn't tell anyone that day. Not properly. I think I tried later, in that half-laughing way kids do when they're terrified and testing if it's safe to admit it. But it didn't matter. Adults always have an explanation ready. Oh, that was an angel. No, demons. You're gifted. You're a medium. And I remember thinking, okay, cool. Or maybe I need help. Because what kind of kid sees a faceless bride in a cemetery? I kept going back though. Not every day after that, but often enough. And the graveyard started to feel busy in small ways. Sounds like children laughing when no one was there. Footsteps behind me when I was alone. That place had a lot of tiny headstones. Kids who didn't get to grow up. And almost nobody visited them. No toys, no flowers, just weather and time. Around 12, my life got heavy in a way that's hard to describe without your throat tightening. Bullying at school, my grandmother getting sicker, my mom drinking more than she should. And then, I got pulled into a relationship with an older boy that wasn't really a relationship at all. It was control, fear, pressure. The kind of thing you don't even recognize as abuse at first because you're too young to have the words. And weirdly, that's when I started going to the graveyard more, because it felt like the only place that didn't ask me to pretend I was fine. I'd bring little offerings, not like candles and ritual stuff, just pieces of me. A drawing tucked under a stone, a flower I'd picked on the way there. I'd clean up around the graves, brush dirt off nameplates, straighten little fallen decorations that someone left years ago. I never stepped directly on the plots. I treated the place like it had rules, like it deserved respect. I think I believed, deep down, that if I was gentle with the dead, something gentle might find its way back to me. And then one night, that boy tried to do something to me that I still struggled to say out loud. It was violent, and it was wrong, and it left me feeling like my body didn't belong to me anymore. Afterward, I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell a teacher. I didn't tell a priest. I didn't tell anyone. Part of me thought it was my fault. Part of me thought, this is just what love is like, which makes me want to go back in time and wrap my arms around that kid version of me and shake the world until it made room for her to be safe. I grew up around Catholicism, so my brain went to that awful place where you think suffering means you're being punished. Like God was angry at you, and this was the price. So I started praying on my own, but not in a church, in the graveyard. There was a big tree near the spot where I'd first seen the bride, and I'd sit under it and whisper prayers I half remembered and half made up. Forgiveness prayers, protection prayers, begging prayers. The kind of prayers you say when you're crying so hard you can't breathe right. I assumed no one was listening. But then one day, he came with me. It was daytime, and for a while it was normal. We walked, talked. The air felt ordinary, until we got close to that area under the tree. His whole body changed. He went pale, like the color drained out of him. He stopped so suddenly I almost walked into him, and he just stood there staring past me, staring into the cemetery like he'd suddenly realized he was in a room where he wasn't welcome. "I want to leave," he said, and I laughed a little because I didn't understand. "Why?" He swallowed hard and said, "Something is watching me." But he looked at me with real fear, the kind you can't fake. "It's watching me," he whispered. "It's angry. It hates me. We need to go." And even then, I didn't fully let myself believe it. We kept walking, but he got worse the deeper we went, like the air itself was pressing on him. Then he looked down at his ankle and froze. What is that?" I looked too. There was this bright orange cord, like a wire almost, wrapped tight around his ankle. Tight enough that it looked painful. And I swear to you, it hadn't been there when we walked in. He hadn't crouched down. He hadn't even paused long enough to mess with his shoe. It was just there. Like something had decided to mark him. He yanked my hand and dragged me out so fast we were practically running. After that, it got harder to tell myself everything was just in my head, because that moment didn't feel like a hallucination meant to scare me. It felt like something else had finally turned its eyes on him. And I'm not proud to admit this, but I felt relief. Not joy, not revenge. Just this shaky relief, like, I'm not alone. Someone sees. Someone knows. I eventually got away from him when I started high school, and later I found out it wasn't just me. Other girls came forward, more than I ever wanted to imagine, and something in me snapped into place. If I stayed quiet, he'd keep doing it. So I reported him. The legal process was brutal and messy, and not as satisfying as people think it is. But I was believed. Enough. He didn't get every charge people hoped he would. It wasn't perfect. But he was found guilty, and there were consequences. And what still messes with my head is this. Every time he tried to threaten me afterward, every time he tried to ruin me, it was like it didn't stick. Things fell through. His plans failed. People didn't turn on me the way he wanted. It felt like something kept stepping between me and the worst of it. I'm not saying that's supernatural. I'm just saying it felt like I wasn't fighting completely alone. On the day I found out his sentence, I went for a long walk. My body didn't know what to do with the mixture of rage and relief, so my feet just kept moving. And somehow I ended up back at the graveyard. I walked straight to that plot under the tree, the one I always prayed near, and I sat down like I used to. I was older then, 15, maybe 16. The place looked the same, but I didn't. I cleaned up a little, picked up debris, straightened what I could. Then I sat and prayed one last time, not begging, not desperate, just grateful. And I said, out loud, to the stone, to the air, to whatever might have been there all those years, thank you for believing me. Then I left. I'm 18 now, well, almost 19, and I don't really see things anymore, not the way I did. The medication changed that, and even though I'm off it now, it's like that chapter closed quietly. But I still go to the graveyard sometimes, not because I'm searching for ghosts, because it feels like a place that held me when nothing else did. And even if I don't see them, I still feel, in a way I can't fully explain, that I'm not the only one keeping watch. So let me tell you about something that happened to me in the Delaware Water Gap, on the New Jersey side, back in early March, a couple years ago. It was on that rough stretch of Old Mine Road between the pull-offs for Van Campen's Glen and the Upper Glen. If you know the gap, you know it has a way of getting under your skin. I've spent so much time out there over the years that it feels almost personal, like the place recognizes you. And I've seen plenty of wild stuff in those woods too. Coyotes calling off in the distance, bobcats slipping through the brush like ghosts, snapping turtles big enough to make you question your life choices, hawks and owls watching you like you owe them money. I've even crossed paths with black bears more times than I can count. So I'm not somebody who panics every time a shadow moves. But what happened that night? I'm telling you straight, this wasn't maybe it was an animal territory. This was something else. It was my first real hike after winter, and the day had been beautiful. Sun out, crisp air, that early spring feeling like the world is waking back up. I finished up late, and right around 5:30 or so, a light rain started falling. Not a downpour, just enough to darken everything fast. By the time I got back to my car near the old Calno schoolhouse, the woods felt like they'd flipped a switch. One second it's dusk, the next it's night. I pulled out, about to make that left onto Old Mine Road, and I caught the glow of headlights coming from my right. My first instinct was to punch it and get in front, because locals learn real quick. If you get stuck behind a tourist on Old Mine Road, you might as well pack a lunch. The posted speed is 15 miles per hour, but between the potholes and those crater-sized dips, half the people drive like they're navigating the moon. But I hesitated, just for a beat, because I thought, what if it's a park ranger? I didn't feel like looking guilty for no reason. The vehicle rolls past me, and it's not a ranger, and it's definitely not a nervous tourist. It's a newer red pickup, looked like a Silverado, with Pennsylvania plates. The driver was moving like they knew the road, weaving around the worst potholes smooth as anything. I fell in behind them, keeping a couple car lengths back, basically letting them lead through the damage. We passed the main lot for Van Campen's Glen. The road rises a little, then levels out, and that's when the truck taps its brakes. Not a slam, just a firm little checkup like they saw something ahead. Then the brake lights flare fully, and the truck stops dead. I stop behind them, confused, looking for the obvious explanation. Deer? Downed limb? Maybe a big branch dragged into the road. And then I see movement on the right side, close to the shoulder, something swaying in the dim light in a way that just felt wrong. Not like an animal shifting weight, not like a bush in the wind either. It was this jittery, uneven motion, like it couldn't decide what shape it wanted to be. I watched the silhouette of the pickup driver lean toward their window, trying to get a better look. And that's when I realize what I'm looking at least what it seems like at first. It looks like a fox, but it's standing upright, on its hind legs, too tall, too straight. The proportions are off in that way your brain tries to correct, like it's insisting it has to be normal, because the alternative is ridiculous. My first thought was, oh man, that thing's sick. Rabid, maybe. Something neurological. Because I didn't want to think anything else. Then there's this quick pause, 2 seconds, maybe 3. I swear my brain couldn't translate it fast enough. It was like watching a scene without subtitles. The red pickup doesn't hesitate another heartbeat. It slams into gear and takes off like it's fleeing a fire. Tires biting, engine roaring, the whole truck fishtailing for a second as it crests that rise, like the driver almost lost it. And then the taillights are gone around the bend. And I'm just sitting there behind them, staring forward with my hands locked on the steering wheel, like it's the only solid thing left in the world. So I do the one thing you do when your brain is screaming for clarity. I hit my high beams. And the light catches it fully. This thing is about 3.5 feet tall, maybe closer to 4. It's leaning forward like it's hunched with age, and it's doing this horrible bouncing sway, like it's balancing on the balls of its feet, rocking and twitching in short, unnatural bursts. The closest comparison I can make is that unsettled, erratic movement you sometimes see in people who aren't fully present, like their body is moving ahead of their mind. And then I see the face situation, and my stomach drops. Because the fox head, what I thought was a fox head, doesn't look right. The eye areas are wrong, like empty, like the sockets are there, but there's nothing in them the way there should be. And the hands, God, the hands, not paws. Small human hands, wrapped up in something, cloth strips or leather binding, like crude little gloves. And then it snaps its head up, and for a split second it's like the fox skin is just a covering, like a costume pulled too tight over something that was never meant to wear it. Underneath is this ancient-looking little face, humanish but not in a comforting way, weathered, sharp, old, and it spreads this grin across its mouth that's so mean and delighted, like it's proud of scaring you, like it's feeding on the reaction. And in its hands it's holding something like a staff, or a rattlestick, about half its height. When it jerks it up toward my window, the end of it has 3 bright orange ornaments, shapes like little gourd bulbs or maracas, or even those old oversized Christmas lights. They were arranged in a way that made the top look almost forked, like a rough trident shape. It doesn't strike my car the way it struck the truck. It just shakes that rattle hard, right near my window, as if it's warning me off. And I could have sworn it was muttering while it did it. Not clear words, but that nasty little rhythm of someone talking under their breath and laughing at the same time. Listen, I've been scared before in the woods. I've had moments where adrenaline hits and you go cold. But this was different. This felt like my reality had been nudged sideways. And then the only instinct I had left kicked in. Leave. Now. I didn't slam the gas like the truck did, but I got moving fast enough that the potholes didn't matter anymore. And as soon as I was rolling, I started talking out loud to myself. Yep, you saw that. Yep, that just happened. Yep, that was real. Over and over, because part of my mind was already trying to erase it, trying to smooth it out into something acceptable, trying to tell me it was a trick of rain and darkness and exhaustion. But I knew it wasn't. And here's the weirdest part. Once I got some distance, I realized I wasn't even feeling pure fear. I felt charged, grateful even, like I'd been allowed to glimpse something I wasn't supposed to see, like the gap had lifted a corner of its curtain for half a minute and then dropped it again. And the face, This is going to sound oddly specific, but it reminded me of the strong-featured, hard-working indigenous guys I've known through jobs over the years. That kind of deep-set intensity in the eyes. Only in this case, it was twisted into something mischievous and mean. Like a little trickster that had been around way longer than any of us and was sick of people driving through its backyard. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I know exactly what it was. I don't. But if you ask me what it felt like an old spirit, a watcher, a bully, something that wanted outsiders to know very clearly that the road and the woods weren't theirs just because there's a sign and a parking lot. Call it folklore, call it paranoia, call it whatever makes you comfortable. But the normal explanation is honestly worse to me, because the only non-weird alternative is that there's some little person out there at night dressed in foxhide with a rattlestaff, waiting to terrorize drivers for fun. And I don't buy that. Not out there. Not in that stretch. Not with the way it moved. I don't think it wanted to kill us. I truly don't. It felt more like a warning, a scare tactic. Like, keep moving. Don't stop. Don't linger. But I'll tell you this. I still think about that staff sometimes. The way it looked. The 3 orange ornaments. The way it shook it like it was part weapon, part instrument, part message. And every time I drive Old Mine Road in fading light, I catch myself glancing at the shoulders, half expecting to see something swaying in the dark, bouncing, waiting, grinning like it knows a secret I don't. So, for a long stretch of my life, almost 10 years, I worked inside Philadelphia's City Hall. If you've never been in that building, let me paint it for you the way it always felt to me. It's built like a giant square donut. Each side is about a full city block long, and there are these enclosed bridges that connect the sections, so you're walking along these corridors that look inward over a quiet courtyard and outward over the streets below. Every corner has an elevator bank at the end of these ridiculously long hallways, and right beside each set of elevators, there's a heavy door that opens into these marble stairwells, cold, echoey, the kind of place where your footsteps sound like they belong to someone else. And the doors, that's the thing. Solid wood doors everywhere. Courtrooms, offices, so many of them, lined up like a row of sealed boxes. The place can be busy, technically. People working, phones ringing, meetings happening. But when you're out in the hall, you can't see or hear any of it. So you'll be walking through this architectural masterpiece and still feel weirdly alone. Like the building is holding its breath. Anyway, one afternoon, I had to walk from room 298 over to room 231. Same floor, but you know how it is in there. Down the hall, around a corner, then another corner, and suddenly you've walked what feels like half a mile. I did what I always did on that kind of trip. Head down, papers in hand, brain halfway somewhere else. I finished what I needed in 231 and started back toward 298, flipping through the paperwork as I walked, trying to make sure I hadn't missed anything. And then, about halfway down the hall, I looked up toward the elevator bank. And I saw Gina. Not my close friend or anything. We didn't really talk. She worked in a different office on the same floor, so we knew each other in that familiar coworker way. A nod here, a quick morning there. But what made me pause was how dressed up she was. You know when someone looks too put together for a regular workday? Like, hair perfect, outfit sharp, the whole vibe like she was headed somewhere important. I remember thinking, wow, okay, big day for Gina. So I smiled and called out, hey, and she smiled back. Not rushed, not distracted, just calm. warm even. She lifted her hand and gave me this little wave while she waited at the elevator, like it was the most normal thing in the world. And I kept walking. I rounded the corner toward my office, and honestly, that was it. No bells going off in my head, no lingering fear. Just a quick moment in the hall, filed away like any other. Until the next morning. I came in and a few people were gathered near the copier, talking in that low, serious way that makes you slow down before you even know why. I asked what was going on, and one of my coworkers turned to me and said, "Did you hear about Gina?" And I was genuinely confused, because in my head, she was still right there, by the elevator, smiling at me. So I said, "No, what happened?" And my coworker swallowed hard and said, "Her son called the front office. She passed away in her sleep. They just told us." My stomach dropped. I said, without even thinking, "What? No, I just saw her yesterday. She looked fine. She was here, by the elevators." And the second the words left my mouth, the whole little group went quiet. They all just looked at me. Then the person who'd told me the news shook their head slowly and said, "No, you didn't. She died the day before yesterday. Her son only called this morning, but she's been gone." I didn't argue. I didn't push it. I just nodded like, "Oh, okay," and I went back to my desk. But here's the thing. I know what I saw. I know the hallway. I know the elevator bank. I know the way she smiled, like she was headed somewhere, like she was fine, like she was still part of the world. And ever since then, every time I picture those endless corridors in City Hall, I think about how a place can be full of people and still feel empty, and how sometimes you can walk through a building that's holding 1,000 lives behind wooden doors, and still run into someone who, by every normal rule, shouldn't have been there at all. Hey, thanks for listening. I have been trying to find the right words for this because I don't want it to sound like a horror story. It's just my life. And lately, it's felt like I'm living inside something I can't explain. All through my childhood, I had these moments. Little things that didn't fit. I once told my grandma there'd been a fire in a house long before anyone ever mentioned it. Then later, we found out there had been one on that same property. I used to talk about kids outside and play like they were right there with me, even though the grown-ups insisted there was nobody. Back then, it felt normal, like I was just tuned in to something other people weren't. As an adult, it hasn't been like seeing full figures in the hallway or anything. It's more subtle now. I walk into a room and I can feel it, like the air has a mood. I read people without trying. Sometimes I'll catch myself quietly mapping out how a situation is going to unfold before it even happens, like my body knows the script. Then, a few months ago, my brother-in-law died by suicide. The day we went to his place to pick up some of his things, I stepped inside and it was like my chest locked up. I couldn't get a full breath. I remember standing there thinking, why am I panicking? I wandered down the hall without really choosing to, opened the bathroom door, and this is the part that still makes my skin prickle. Everything in me just released. It felt like someone turned a dial from panic to peace. Warm, soft, almost glowing in my bones. The kind of calm you feel right before anesthesia pulls you under, when your body finally stops fighting. Later, I learned that was the room where he died. I don't hear him like a voice in the room. It's more like thoughts that don't feel like mine, but they carry his tone. And I'll get these quick flashes in my mind, snapshots that I can't place, until I mention them to family and someone goes quiet and says, "That's real. That happened when he was little." One image kept coming back, a dark leather couch with this bright, burnt orange pillow. I tried to shrug it off. Brains do weird stuff when we're grieving, right? But when we went to the viewing to say goodbye, there it was, that exact couch, that exact pop of orange. I remember just standing there, cold all over, because I hadn't been looking for it. I didn't even know it existed. And there's this other thing, his cologne. I'll catch a whiff of it when my partner, his sister, gets overwhelmed or starts to crumble. It's strongest at my grandparents' place, especially when everyone's worried about their health. Just a sudden thread of that scent in the air, like a hand on my shoulder that isn't mine. I could almost live with all of that. Grief does strange things, and love doesn't always leave quietly. But then, there's this house. We moved here around a year and a half ago, closer to 16 months, I think, and I can't find much about its history. No clear trail. But the feeling inside it is heavy. Like the moment I walk in, something in my gut drops, like my organs fall an inch. It's not spooky. It's oppressive, dense, like the house is holding its breath and expecting me to do the same. And the weirdest part is, I can't leave. Leaving should be easy. It's just a door. But it feels like pushing through wet cement. On the rare times I do get out, I'm scattered and unreal for a few minutes, like my brain is full of static. And then, suddenly I'm myself again. And I'll think, there you are. Like the real me briefly returned. I keep saying out loud, I think someone died here. I haven't seen a man in the corner. I haven't watched anything crawl across the floor. It's not that. It's just this certainty that sits in my body like a stone. I get these visions in my mind of a bedroom, my bedroom, laid out a certain way, with a certain kind of light, a certain kind of furniture arrangement. One night I went digging online, searching old listings and archived photos, and when I found them, my stomach flipped. The room in the photos matched what I'd been seeing in my head. Not perfectly down to every object, but enough that I felt like I'd been dreaming someone else's memory. And now I'm pulled to that room constantly. I'll stay in there for days. It's like my body believes it's the only place that makes sense, even when it doesn't feel safe, even when it feels like the walls are too close. My mental health has collapsed in ways I can barely describe without feeling ashamed. I don't work anymore. My sleep is down to a couple hours if I'm lucky. Eating feels like an impossible chore. I've been on so many medications I can't even keep track without checking the bottles. And I've had moments, more than once, where I've tried to end my life. I need you to know something, though. I don't want to die. That's what makes it so terrifying. These urges can hit like a wave that isn't mine, like a command that doesn't match my heart. I used to be steady. I had routines. I ran a business. I was studying psychology. I had structure and drive. Now I can barely recognize the way my days look, like my life got swapped out and I missed the moment it happened. There are other small things. Noises that make you pause. A door that clicks when nobody's near it. A water bottle tipping off the counter when it wasn't close to the edge. The kind of stuff you can rationalize until you're already unraveling, and then it lands heavier. During the worst of it, I adopted a cat. She's this little dark, glossy thing with sharp eyes, not the cute, playful type. At the shelter, she barely moved, and the staff warned me she could be aggressive, that she wouldn't be affectionate. But the pull I felt toward her was so strong, it was like my body chose her before my brain could argue. The moment I brought her into my room, she started purring. Now she won't leave my side. Bathroom, shower, bed, she's there. She sleeps on me like she's anchoring me to the world. She's picky with food, but she'll actually eat if I'm nearby, like she needs me present to feel safe. And she stares, always stares, at the same spot in the room, like she's watching something that never blinks back. Lately, I've been having panic episodes where I'm convinced I'm not safe. I barricade myself in my room. I look at the people I love, and my brain tries to tell me they aren't really them, like I'm watching a bad copy of my own life. I've done things I don't understand afterward, like trying to get out through a window, like my body is in pure escape mode. And there was one night that still scares me to say out loud. I lost time while driving. I came back to myself outside the car, in a scrubby area off the road, and my phone showed I'd called my mom and my sister to say goodbye. I don't remember making that call. I don't remember pulling over. I don't remember getting out. The ambulance came. I ended up on a short psychiatric hold, sedated, then sent home with more instructions and more pills. And now I'm here, on the couch, writing this while my stomach churns. The nausea eases if I go to my room, which makes no sense because the room is also the place that feels like it has a gravity all its own. My body is exhausted, but my nervous system won't stand down. I'm always scanning, bracing, waiting. I don't know how to communicate with anything, if there even is anything. I don't want to invite something in, and I don't want to feed a delusion if that's what this is. I just know I'm losing myself, and I miss the person I used to be. So I'm telling you because I need someone outside my own head to hear it plainly. I am scared. I am not okay. And I don't want to die. I want this to stop. And if I'm honest, part of me is saying this out loud because I need a lifeline. Not a theory, not an explanation. A lifeline. If you're hearing me right now, and you're the kind of person who can stay with someone through the hard parts, please, don't let me do this alone. And if you're in Thailand like I am, if you ever get to that point where you feel like you might hurt yourself, please call the Department of Mental Health hotline at 1323. If you need someone to talk to, you can also call Samaritans Thailand at 02-113-6789, and in an emergency, you can call 1669 for an ambulance. So, I moved into this house back in 2019, and I swear, I didn't even have the word weird in my head about it at first. It just felt like a normal place to live. But somewhere around 2020, little things started to feel off. Not dramatic movie off, more like, wait, was that just me? Off. The first thing I really remember was my dog. His name was Buddy. He was about 7 at the time, and he got into this strange routine that happened almost every night. He'd be lying there, totally calm, and then all of a sudden he'd sit up and start sniffing the air like he caught a scent that wasn't supposed to be there. Not playful sniffing, focused, intent. And then he'd freeze, completely still, like he was waiting for some invisible command. It reminded me of those search dogs when they hit on something important. He'd stay frozen for maybe 30 seconds to a minute. Then he'd casually walk right back to his bed and lie down like nothing happened. No barking, no growling, no panic. Just this odd little ritual. That went on for a couple months, and then it just stopped. And honestly, life got busy and I forgot all about it. Over the years after that, I'd have small stuff go missing, nothing huge. Like a coaster that should be on the bar suddenly showing up on a shelf upstairs. Or a remote disappearing for days and then turning up in a spot I swear I already checked. But it wasn't constant, so I never really tied it together. I just assumed I was tired, distracted, messy, whatever. Then toward the end of 2025, things got a lot harder to shrug off. My dad had come over to install these recessed can lights in my downstairs bar area. Everything looked great. That same night, I had a few friends over, just a chill hangout. A couple beers, some darts, playing pool, the usual. At one point, we were mid-game, and I'm standing there lining up a shot when, no joke, the pool triangle rack and the 9-ball rack suddenly launched off the wall. Not slid down, not gently fell. They flew out and dropped like someone had smacked the wall from the outside. All of us just froze. Like that quiet, collective, did that just happen? Silence. I walked over, picked them up, and put them right back onto the hooks. And then we did that thing people do when they don't want to admit they're unsettled. We started trying to explain it away like detectives. We checked the hooks first. They weren't loose at all. In fact, they were those adhesive command hooks that are basically married to your wall. I even pulled one off to test it, and it ripped up paint, so there was no chance it had shifted or slowly peeled off or anything like that. We tried blaming vibrations, like maybe my dad drilling and working earlier loosened them, but that didn't fit either, because I'd literally just used the racks and put them back. And I always pushed them flat against the wall, seated safely, not hanging on the edge like they could slip. And still, the way they came off wasn't like gravity won. It was like force pushed them off. Then, this is the part that really got under my skin. Less than a week later, my mom stayed over with me and my boyfriend for the night. The next evening, she casually asks me, "Were you hanging stuff in your room around 2 a.m?" I laughed and was like, "What? No." And she goes, "I heard banging, like you were hammering nails into the wall." The thing is, I was asleep. It was a work night, and my boyfriend was asleep too. He's the kind of sleeper who would absolutely notice if I got up, because he basically sleeps pressed against me. He swore I didn't move. So now I'm sitting there with 2 separate incidents, weeks apart, that don't really connect, but also don't feel easy to dismiss. So yeah, that's where I'm at. Not claiming it's anything supernatural, but also not totally convinced it's nothing. And I guess I'm telling you because I genuinely want to know. If this were happening to you, what would you think it was? So, I need to tell you about this thing that happened to me the other night, because it still gives me this weird, tight feeling in my chest when I think about it. I was dreaming, nothing unusual at first, but something in it started to feel off, like the whole scene was glitching. And then I had that sudden thought, wait, I'm dreaming right now. The second I realized it, it was like the entire dream heard me. Everyone around me changed. Their faces weren't even angry at first, just locked onto me, like I'd broken some rule. And then they rushed me. Not in a movie fight way either, more like this overwhelming swarm, like the dream itself decided I didn't belong there anymore. My first instinct was to wake myself up. I tried to yank myself out of it the way you do when you're having a nightmare. But instead of waking up, I froze. I mean, completely froze. My eyes were open, or at least I felt like they were, but my body wouldn't move at all. I couldn't lift a hand, couldn't turn my head, couldn't even sit up. I wasn't fully asleep, but I wasn't fully awake either. I was just trapped in that in-between place. And the creepiest part? There wasn't even a shadowy figure or anything like that. No sleep paralysis demon. Just me, stuck there, panicking in silence. And this isn't even the first time something like this has happened. That's what scares me. It's like my brain knows the route. Because right when I thought, okay, maybe I'm waking up now, my mind pulled another trick. It felt like I slipped back under without noticing, like I fell asleep again mid-rescue, and suddenly I was right back in the same dream loop. Same atmosphere, same tension. Like I'd been dragged back to the exact place I was trying to escape. So I tried waking up again. I fought harder, I pushed and pushed until, finally, I woke up. Or, I thought I did. I was in the bedroom where I'd fallen asleep. Everything looked normal. The walls, the lighting, the familiar shape of the room. I was so relieved that I started yelling, like full-on shouting out loud. And the woman beside me, her name was Lena, shot upright, startled awake. She was asking what was wrong, and I was talking to her, trying to explain, trying to calm down. It felt so real, so solid. I remember her voice. I remember the way the room sounded when she moved. And then, out of nowhere, I slipped again. That same heavy drop, that same helpless feeling, like I was being pulled backward through a trap door. And suddenly, I was back in that first situation, stuck, unable to move, caught in that awful half-awake paralysis again. At that point, I was just exhausted, not even just scared, tired, like I'd been fighting my own brain for hours. And then, I actually woke up for real. This time there was no doubt. My body moved. The air felt different. The room felt stable. I grabbed my phone and checked the time, 3:34 a.m. And I just laid there thinking, why does it happen like that? Why does the dream turn on me the moment I realize I'm dreaming? Like awareness is the trigger. Why do I wake up paralyzed like I'm stuck inside my body? And how does my mind manage to fake me out so convincingly, like a dream inside a dream, until I don't even trust waking up anymore? So, let me take you back a couple years. There were 5 of us at the house that night, just friends hanging out, because Ria's parents were swamped with work and almost never stayed home back then. It felt like we had the place to ourselves, like a little private world. And honestly, we were laughing so much we completely forgot the one tiny detail we all knew in the back of our heads. That house had a reputation. At first, everything was normal. We were chilling, talking, messing around, just a simple night in. But then the evening started acting wrong. Around 7 p.m., it got dark, like really dark. And that didn't make sense because it was summer, and in our area, it usually wouldn't get properly dark until closer to 9. We noticed it, we even joked about it, but nobody wanted to be the person who said, this is creepy. Then around 8, the power cut out. Not a flicker, fully gone. The entire house just dropped into darkness like someone shut it off on purpose. We waited for the inverter to kick in, and it didn't. Turned out that had died too, so we were stuck with this thick, heavy dark. No lights, no fans, nothing. We lit a few candles, and 2 of my friends started feeling around the place trying to find a torch. And while they were doing that, the temperature shifted. I swear, it was like someone opened a door to winter. It got cold. Not a little chilly cold, weird cold. The kind of cold that makes your skin tighten. And again, we all noticed. And again, we all tried to brush it off like, okay, yeah, sure, totally normal. Because what else do you do? After a while, we got bored sitting around candles, so someone suggested we play a game. Basically a dark version of hide and seek where one person has to find the others. Normally, we'd blindfold the seeker, but the whole house was already pitch black, so we didn't bother. The first few rounds were actually fun. Like genuinely fun. We were whispering and trying not to laugh, bumping into furniture, daring each other to hide in weirder places. Then we hit the round that ruined everything. 2 of my friends decided to hide near the doorway by the shoe rack. It wasn't even tall, more like one of those short racks you can sit on if you really want to. One friend perched on top, and the other crouched beside it. Me and another friend went to the bedroom. Now this friend, Armand, was a serious basketball player, like proper competitive, and he had this brutal bruise on his leg from a recent fall. I mean, it was nasty. Dark, swollen, the kind of bruise you look at and immediately wince. He was already moving a little carefully because it hurt that bad. So we're in the bedroom, tucked away, trying to stay quiet. And after a while, maybe 15, 20 minutes, it felt like someone came close to us. Not like, I hear footsteps, like presence. That sensation where the air shifts and your brain goes, someone's right there. We assumed it was the seeker, so we froze, covering our mouths, shaking with silent laughter, waiting for that aha moment. And then, the screaming started. First, the two friends by the shoe rack screamed like something had happened to them. Then the seeker screamed. Then Armand, right beside me, let out this horrible shout that didn't even sound like him. And that's when panic just took over. We didn't even talk, we just ran. All of us bolted out of the house like the building itself had suddenly decided it didn't want us inside anymore. Outside, the streetlights were on, and the world looked normal again. Bright enough to see everyone's faces. Bright enough to realize we were all shaking. I remember going, "What happened? What happened?" Because my brain couldn't catch up. And one by one, everyone told me what they saw. The friend hiding beside the rack said he saw two pairs of red eyes in the dark. Not a reflection. Not maybe it was something. He was dead serious. Eyes, low to the ground, staring. The seeker said she saw an actual figure move right in front of her, like a whole silhouette sprinting past, and then it ran toward the upstairs area, like it was heading for the terrace. And Armand was limping, face pale, voice cracking, and he pulled up his pant leg and said someone had pressed into his bruise, like fingers digging in, so hard it started bleeding again. You know when you hear a bunch of scary things and your mind tries to argue with them? Like, okay, maybe one thing could be explained. But all of it at once? All of us experiencing something different at the exact same moment? Yeah, no. That was it. The night was over. No debate. No, maybe it's fine. We called it immediately. And later, Rhea told us something that made my stomach drop even more. She said the dogs around her house go absolutely wild at exactly 3:33 a.m., like on schedule, like they're reacting to something they can sense and we can't. I've been through a lot of things in my life, but I'm not exaggerating when I say this. That was the single scariest experience I've ever had. And even now, thinking about that sudden cold, that dead darkness, those screams starting one after another like dominoes, it still makes me feel like something in that house didn't just scare us. It noticed us. Hey, so I've been holding on to this for a while, and I'm sharing it the same way it lives in my head, like I'm talking to a friend who won't laugh at me. When I was 15, my mom moved us from Ohio down to West Virginia, Huntington. It wasn't the middle of nowhere or anything, but it had those edges where the city just sort of gives up and the woods start. You know what I mean? Streetlights, sidewalks, and then suddenly a trailhead and trees that look like they've been there forever. It was late summer, still warm out, and my little brother, Bub, and I decided we wanted to be out of the house. We weren't looking for trouble, just that restless teenage, I can't breathe in these four walls feeling. We grabbed a couple tall cans, and I had a few joints tucked away. Bub wasn't much of a drinker, so most of it was mine. We figured we'd walk toward the park and maybe cut through the trail if it felt safe. The park wasn't far, but there was this stretch you had to walk where things got quiet, like the city noise fell behind you. There was an open lot on the left, a square of grass where you could tell a house was supposed to be built someday. No fence, no construction, just this empty patch next to the road, like a missing tooth. We were maybe, I don't know, a couple 100 feet from it? Close enough to see clearly, far enough that if something moved, you'd have a second to react. And that's when we saw it. At first, my brain didn't even have a label for it, just something pale. Really pale, bald, long-limbed in a way that didn't look right. It was low to the ground on all fours, facing away from us like it hadn't noticed we were there. The way it held itself wasn't like a dog or a deer. It looked wrong, like it was doing something it wasn't built to do. Bub stopped so hard he almost bumped into me. I felt his hand grab my arm, tight. And in this small voice, like he didn't want it to hear, he goes, "Sissy, what is that?" He still calls me that, and I still call him Bub. We've always been like that. No real names, just family names. I remember this very clearly. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't want to, but because my throat just wouldn't. And also because I could feel him starting to panic, and I knew if I acted panicked too, we'd both spiral. So I did the thing I'd always done as the older sister. I acted like I didn't care. I just kind of shrugged, like, whatever, even though inside my heart was beating so hard it felt like it had hands. I stared at it, and I stayed still, because something in me said, "Don't run. Don't make it a chase." Then it moved. It didn't turn around fully. It did this sharp, jerky head motion, like when someone snaps their head back over their shoulder because they felt eyes on them. And it looked right at me. I swear to you, I felt it hit me like a weight, like the air got heavier. Its face, it didn't have much of a nose, not like a normal person's. And its mouth was there, but the lips didn't look like living lips. I don't know how else to say it. The eyes were the worst part. Dark and small, not like big animal eyes, more like human eyes that were empty. Like nobody was home. Like whatever was looking out of them wasn't fully there. And while it kept its body facing away, it held eye contact with me and it screamed. Not a movie scream, not a person yelling. It was this harsh, strange sound that felt like it didn't belong outside, like it came from too deep or from the wrong shape of throat. And I didn't move. I know that sounds dramatic, but I had one thought. Nothing happens to him. Not while I'm standing here. I remember thinking, I can't die. I'm not dying in a field, and he's not getting hurt because I panicked. So I stayed locked in place, staring back, even though every part of me wanted to grab Bub and bolt. And then, it ran. But it didn't run like a normal person either. It just took off on all fours, fast, too fast, and vanished toward the darker edge of the lot where the grass met the trees. And just like that, the field was empty again, like it had never been there. We didn't go into the park after that, not even close. I didn't say, "Let's check it out." And I didn't even say, "Did you see that?" I just gently pulled Bub along and kept walking, but I changed our route. I stayed in the most lit-up areas I could find, near houses and porch lights and open streets. I kept my voice calm, like we were just taking a different way home because I felt like it. The whole walk back, we barely spoke. Bub was quiet in this way that made me feel sick, like he was trying not to cry. I kept glancing behind us, but I never saw it again. We didn't talk about it until we were inside, door locked, bedroom door shut, sitting on my bed like we were trying to convince ourselves the walls meant something. For a while, we told ourselves it was probably a person. Maybe someone messed up on drugs. Maybe someone with some kind of condition. We repeated that explanation for weeks like it was a prayer. But neither of us actually believed it. Not deep down. Because I've seen people act weird. I've seen people on substances. I've seen animals do scary things. And this wasn't any of that. This was bald and pale and thin in a way that felt unnatural. And that scream. God, that scream. I've never heard anything like it before or since. The part that sticks with me the most, honestly, is what Bub told me later. He said the way I acted like I didn't care helped him, that it kept him from losing it completely. And that breaks my heart a little, because I was terrified too. I was just pretending harder. It's been a few years now, and I still think about what might have happened if we ran. If it would have chased us, or if it would have turned into something worse just because we fed into that energy. I've told people in real life, and most of them do that thing where they say, "That's scary," and then immediately try to top it with their own ghost story. Some say they believe me, but you can tell they're not sure what to do with it. And I get it. I don't even know what to do with it. I've tried searching. I've tried finding anything. Reports, sightings, keywords, weird local stories. Anything that gives it a name other than that pale thing. But I can't find the right words because I still don't know what it was. I just know what I saw. And I know my brother saw it too. So, this happened a while back, but I can still feel it in my stomach when I think about it. I woke up in the middle of the night. That kind of sudden wake up where everything is too quiet and your brain is instantly alert. And my first thought was my cat, Milo. He's an outdoor cat, comes and goes, and sometimes he'll sit by the house, waiting to be let in like he owns the place. There's this small window in the corridor, and I usually call him from there. So I patted out, half asleep, and whispered his name into the night. And almost immediately, I heard something running over the snow toward the front of the house. The sound was so clear, that quick scritch, scritch, scritch of paws or boots. I couldn't tell which, but it was moving fast. It got close, like right behind the corner of the house, and then it just stopped. Dead stop. I stood there, holding my breath, waiting for the little meow or the familiar shuffle. Instead, after a few seconds, I heard footsteps again, but this time they were retreating. Slow, only a few steps, then another stop. That's when I started feeling wrong about it. Like, not scared yet, but something in me going, pay attention. I waited a bit longer, then stepped outside to see if Milo was there. Nothing. No cat shape, no movement, no little eyes reflecting light. Just the yard and the snow and the trees in front of the house. I live in a village, so it's not like the streetlights are bright or anything. It's darker than people think it is. I called again. This time I heard walking from a different direction. Not running, calm, steady footsteps, like whoever or whatever it was had all the time in the world. But I still couldn't see anything. The trees were just trees, shadows, nothing solid. I remember thinking, maybe I should go closer, just to check. But the instant that idea formed, I got this strong, almost physical feeling of no. Like my body rejected it before my mind could argue. So I stayed put. Then I heard it again. One or two steps, then another. Like it was testing the space between us. Like a weird little game of step, stop, step, stop. I climbed onto the stairs to get a bit higher, thinking maybe I'd finally spot Milo or some fox or something. Still nothing. Just the yard, the snow, and that uneasy silence. There were these wooden pallets stacked near the house, and my brain tried to make it make sense. Okay, it's an animal hiding behind the pallets. That's it. So I took a step, and again, that same internal warning. Don't go over there. And I actually listened to it, which is not always something I'm good at. I stood there, frozen, staring into the dark like if I stared hard enough, the night would confess what it was hiding. Eventually, it went quiet. Quiet enough that I started doubting myself. Maybe it really was Milo. Maybe I just scared him off. Maybe it was nothing. So I went back to my room. A few minutes passed, I don't even know how many. And then I heard footsteps again, faint, from outside. That same slow movement on the snow. I got up and went back to the corridor window. I opened it again, just a crack at first, and listened. I called softly, "Milo?" Nothing answered, but I could feel it out there. I leaned in closer and stared into the darkness. And after a few seconds, something peeked out from behind those pallets. Not a cat, not an animal, just eyes. I didn't see a face. I didn't see a body clearly. Just those eyes, watching from the edge of cover like it had been waiting for me to look again. And I swear to you, my whole body locked up. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I just stared like my brain forgot how to do anything else. And the worst part is, it didn't move either. Not even a flinch, not even a blink that I could see. Eventually, survival kicked in. I shut the window so hard my hands hurt, and I ran back to my room like I was being chased. I slammed the door and stood there, heart pounding so loud it felt like it was filling my ears. And then came the part that messes with me the most, because I honestly don't know what was real. I have a developing case of schizophrenia. I'm on medication and I'm doing my best. Most days I manage fine, but I do have episodes. And that night, after the adrenaline started fading, my brain started doing that cruel thing where it offers two explanations and neither one feels safe. Either someone was out there, or my mind created something that felt completely real. And I'm telling you, that uncertainty is its own kind of fear, because it means I can't neatly file it away as just a creepy night. It sits in this space where I keep asking myself, was I in danger? Or was my brain lying to me? All I know is, I'll never forget those eyes. Hey, so I'm gonna try to explain this without sounding like I'm completely losing it. But honestly, I don't really have a neat explanation. I'm 17 and I live in North Jersey. Not a house, an apartment complex. The kind where most of the neighbors are older and it's usually pretty quiet, especially in the early morning. I've always been a morning person, like annoyingly consistent. On school days, I'm up at 5 a.m. on the dot because I like having time to get ready slowly. Wash up, do my hair, throw on some makeup, eat something. Just start the day without rushing. And at that hour, it's always silent. Like the kind of silent where every tiny sound feels louder than it should. So this started back when I was a sophomore, around the middle of the year. I remember because my routine was the same every day, and what I heard always happened at the same point in it. At 5:20 a.m., I started hearing what sounded like a woman screaming. At first, I did what anyone would do. I tried to explain it away. Maybe someone was watching something too loud. Maybe it was kids messing around. Maybe it was the building itself, old pipes, weird echoes, the way sounds travel through these walls. But then it kept happening. Every morning, same time. And the longer it went on, the harder it was to pretend it was nothing, because it didn't sound like someone yelling out of annoyance. It sounded like pain, like panic, like a person begging the world to stop. The worst part is, it wasn't just one scream. It was repetitive, over and over, and it kept getting louder, like whatever it was getting closer, or getting angrier, or getting more desperate. Now, I'll be honest with you. I've always believed in paranormal stuff. My family's the kind that has stories they swear are real, not campfire stories, stories told quietly, like you're not supposed to say them too loud. So when this started happening, part of me went straight to that place in my head, like, oh no, this is one of those things. But then summer came, and it stopped. and I convinced myself I imagined the whole thing, or at least exaggerated it, because during summer break, I was never awake at that time. I wasn't up at 5. I wasn't there at 5:20 to hear anything, so it faded. I forgot. Life moved on. Fast forward to now, I'm halfway through junior year, and about 2 weeks ago, it started again. And this time, it's worse. By then, the apartment above ours wasn't just some upstairs unit anymore. My grandmother was living there. So when I first heard it again, I tried to be logical and tell myself it was just my grandma waking up early, maybe dragging something, maybe the TV. But then I really listened. It wasn't my grandma. It was that same female scream, only now it sounded louder, sharper, more brutal. Like the kind of scream that makes your stomach drop before your brain even catches up. And then there were other sounds with it. Heavy footsteps, like someone pacing fast or stomping. And sometimes, this part makes my skin crawl even saying it, this dragging noise, like something dense being pulled across the floor. I started thinking things I didn't want to think, like, what if it's not paranormal at all? What if someone is actually being hurt somewhere in this building? What if I'm hearing something real and awful and just standing there brushing my teeth like an idiot? Today was the day it really got to me. I was in the bathroom, washing my face like normal, half awake, and it started up again. Only it was so loud this time, it felt like it went straight through the walls. Bloody murder screaming, the kind that makes your whole body react. Instant goosebumps, heart pounding, that weird cold rush in your arms. But it didn't stop. It went on and on, like 20, 30 minutes, and it felt so real that I started getting this heavy dread in my chest, like I wasn't just hearing a sound, I was being pulled into it. And when I finally went into the kitchen, my mom was there, just normal, calm, like nothing was happening. So I finally asked her, for the first time ever. I was like, "Do you hear that? Have you heard it before?" And she just nodded, like it was casual. She said, "Yeah, I've heard it." And I remember just staring at her like, "What do you mean you've heard it?" I asked why she never said anything to me, and she brushed it off, said it was probably just neighbors being loud or kids or people arguing, and that these buildings amplify everything. But my mom is also the kind of person who has seen things that made her choose religion just to feel safe again. She had experiences when she was a teenager, back in her home country. Stuff that scared her so badly she trained herself to explain everything away after that. Like, if she gives it a normal reason, it can't touch her. Then she hit me with something that made me feel sick. She told me my grandma has been hearing it too, ever since she moved in upstairs. So after school, I went up to talk to my grandmother, my abuela, and I tried to sound casual, like, "Hey, have you been hearing anything weird in the mornings?" And she didn't even hesitate. She told me those screams wake her up at 5:20 a.m., almost like an alarm clock, and that it usually stops around 6:10. Hearing her say the exact same time, without me prompting her, made my whole body go cold. Because that's the part that doesn't feel random. That's the part that feels intentional, like something is scheduled. And now I'm stuck, because I've tried to research the building. I've tried to find stories, past incidents, anything. Some old news article, some warning, some explanation. But there's nothing. It's just an old complex with quiet hallways and people who keep to themselves. But the sound is too consistent, too long, too emotional, too human. And I keep thinking about the way it makes me feel when it starts, like the air shifts, like the walls are thinner, like something is closer than it should be. So yeah, I don't know what to believe. I don't know if it's the building playing tricks with sound, or someone actually being hurt. or something else. Something that's been here longer than we have. All I know is, every morning when I see the clock creeping toward 5:20, I feel my stomach tighten like my body already knows what's coming. And the worst part is that I can't tell if it's trying to get my attention or if I'm just the one finally listening. So, I don't talk about this a lot because it's one of those things that sounds ridiculous out loud, even though I know what I saw. The first time it happened, I was about 6. I was sitting on the carpet with my tablet, just reading. Nothing creepy, no scary videos, none of that. I remember the screen freezing, like it hit this loading page. And that's when I noticed the reflection. Right there in the black glass, behind me, was this face. Except it didn't feel like a real face, more like a mask shaped like one. Bright white, super plain, no real features to grab onto. The weird part is how narrow it was, like someone took one of those blank craft masks you can buy in a pack online and squeezed it thinner. I honestly didn't even feel fear at first. It was more like my body reacted before my brain did. I shut the tablet off instantly, stood up so fast my legs wobbled, and I tossed it behind me like I expected it to smack into something. When I turned around, nothing. Empty room, quiet house. Just me, standing there with my heart starting to catch up to what happened. The second time I saw it clearly was years later, around 16, when my best friend Jay was sleeping over. It was late, like the kind of dark where the house feels like it's holding its breath. My door was cracked open, and we were sitting on the floor playing games with the sound low. And then, at the exact same moment, we both paused. No words. No, did you hear that? Nothing like that. We just stopped playing and slowly looked toward the hallway like something was standing there. And it was. The same narrow white mask. Exactly the same. This time, I think I saw more of it, like a thin, shadowy body attached to it, darker than the hallway itself. But it moved fast, kind of gliding, like walking, but not quite. It crossed the hall and slipped past the doorway, like it had somewhere to be, like we weren't even the point. Jay saw it too. I know he did, because we looked at each other right after, and his face said everything mine was trying not to. And here's what's so hard to explain. Neither of us felt threatened. No dread, no run, no panic. Just this heavy awareness, like something was there, and it wanted us to notice that it was there. Those are the only 2 times I've seen it head-on like that. But in between, I've caught it in the corner of my eye, just a sliver of white where it shouldn't be, gone the second I turn. And other stuff has happened too. Little things at first, then bigger. The one that sticks with me the most is this. We had a piece of fine china sitting on top of the fridge. No pets, no one near it, nothing shaking, no explanation. And it just slid. Like it got shoved with force. It launched off the fridge, skated across the kitchen, and into the living room. And it didn't break. That part messed with me almost more than if it had shattered, because it felt deliberate, like it wanted to show strength, but not destruction. But the reason I'm talking about it now is because something happened recently that crossed a line it's never crossed before. I've been with my girlfriend, Liana, for about 5 years. We're both 18 now. She's way more into spirituality than I am. Like, she'll talk about energy and signs and all that, and I'm usually the one trying to find the practical explanation. She comes over all the time, and she's never had anything happen to her in my house. Not once. Until this. She asks if I can scratch it for her, and I'm like, yeah, of course. So she turns around, and my stomach just drops. Her lower back, the top of her butt, the sides, it was covered in scratches. Fresh ones, red, wet, some of them actually dripping like they'd just happened. And they weren't random. They were in these paired lines, clustered in sets of 3, like something dragged down, lifted, then did it again. My first thought was, maybe she did it in her sleep. But she bites her nails to nothing, like they don't even reach past her fingertips. There's no way she could have done that to herself, especially not that many, especially not that deep. And the blood, it dried freakishly fast, like the scratches were made right before we woke up, or right after. I just stood there staring, trying to force logic into it, and all I could think was, this thing has never gotten close. It's never touched me. It's never tried to scare me. But it touched her. And I can't shake the feeling that whatever's been lingering at the edges of my house for years, whatever's been wearing that narrow white mask, finally decided it didn't just want to be seen anymore. So, for context, I'm 19. I live right near the India-Nepal border, and I'm in Nepal most days. I dropped out for a bit to focus on entrance exams, but if I'm being honest, that turned into me just being home all the time. My sleep schedule is wrecked. I'm up late, scrolling, watching random videos, telling myself I'll fix it tomorrow. Last night, well, technically this morning, around 1:20 a.m., I was bored out of my mind, so I texted my boys, Aftab and Mohi. They're both 20, and they were awake too, obviously, because none of us sleep like normal people anymore. Aftab replies with this idea like it's nothing. Let's go check out that abandoned Catholic boarding school, St. Catherine's Academy. I'd heard little rumors before, you know? People talking about it being haunted, weird stuff at night, all that. It apparently shut down a few years back, around 2018 or 2019, after running forever, like since the mid-1900s. Enrollment dropped, it closed, and it's been sitting there empty since. None of us are big ghost believers. We're more like bored believers. The kind of people who do dumb things at 2 a.m. because our brains are fried. So we check maps. Turns out it's like 25 minutes away from where we were. And around 2 a.m., we're in Mohi's car, driving out there with that weird, this is either going to be funny or a mistake energy. When we get close, the place is huge. Like, not just one building. There's the main academic block, old dorm buildings, and this chapel tucked in, all connected by these covered walkways. There's fencing around it, but of course there's a gap near the back where people have obviously slipped in before. We park off a quiet side road and walk up using only our phone flashlights. And I swear to you, right away it felt wrong. Not boo-scary wrong. More like the air itself was heavy. It was way too quiet. No dogs, no insects, no wind. Just that kind of silence that makes your ears feel full. Mohi tries joking like, "Bro, if a nun runs at me, I'm leaving you both." But I could hear it in his voice. He was forcing it a little. The main doors were chained up, but there was a ground floor window smashed in, so we climbed through. We land in what looks like an old classroom. Desks stacked in the corner, a faded crucifix still on the wall, and the chalkboard. It still had writing on it, barely visible, like someone left mid-lesson and never came back. We start exploring the hallways, peeling paint, water stains, broken ceiling tiles, the usual abandoned building vibe. Aftab is recording on his phone like he's making a documentary, and Mohi keeps throwing out one-liners, trying to keep it light. And honestly, after a bit, we started relaxing. Because it just felt empty. Creepy, sure, but empty. We go upstairs. There are offices with papers scattered everywhere, a library with these sad, empty shelves, and a teacher lounge with chairs turned over like someone left in a hurry years ago. Then we find the corridor to the chapel. It's this long walkway, and at the end, the chapel door is slightly open, just enough to notice. That alone felt wrong, because everything else was either locked or broken into. But this was just open like somebody forgot to close it. We step inside, and the chapel is small, maybe 100 seats. The pews are still there. There's an altar at the front, and above it, this life-size crucifix that looks way too intense in flashlight beams. Stained glass on both sides, some cracked, some missing pieces, so you get these weird, jagged shadows on the floor. We walk down the center aisle taking pictures, whispering, laughing a little. And then, halfway down, all three of us stop at the exact same time. Mohi goes really quietly, "Yo, does anyone else feel like we should leave?" And my stomach just dropped, because I felt it too. Aftab did too. It wasn't like, I'm scared. It was like sudden panic. My chest tightened, my throat went dry, and I got this sick certainty that we were not supposed to be standing there. We didn't even argue. We turned around to head out. And that's when we heard it. A child laughing. And listen, this is what freaks me out. It didn't sound like some horror movie demon laugh. It sounded like real giggling, like a little girl playing. Happy. Normal. It came from the front left side near the altar. All three of us froze. Aftab whispered, "What the hell was that?" And nobody moved. Then it stopped immediately, like someone hit a mute button. We stood there for maybe 20 seconds, trying to convince ourselves we imagined it. And then it happened again. But this time, it sounded like it was behind us, closer to the entrance. Mohi goes, "Nope, nope, I'm out." And he starts walking fast. That's when we heard footsteps above us. The chapel has a second-floor balcony, like where a choir would stand, and the footsteps weren't random creaks. They were slow, deliberate, like someone pacing back and forth, taking their time. We could hear the floorboards complain with each step. Nobody said anything. We didn't do the hello thing. We didn't investigate. We just ran. Like fully ran out of the chapel, back through that corridor, hearts hammering, phones shaking in our hands. And then comes the part that really messed us up. As we're rushing through the corridor back toward the main building, Aftab stops dead at this old bulletin board. It's covered in faded notices and pinned papers that look like they've been there forever. Most of it is unreadable, but there's one newspaper clipping that's still clear enough to make out. Aftab snaps a picture, and we're all leaning in close like idiots, breathing hard, trying to read it by flashlight. The headline says something like, "St. Catherine's student dies in tragic accident." The article is from the early 2000s, 2002 or 2003, and it talks about a 9-year-old girl named Arushi who fell from the choir balcony during rehearsal and died. They called it an accident, but there was this line about parents raising concerns before it happened, like something felt unsafe or off even back then. And we just went quiet. Because the footsteps we heard, that was on the exact balcony. The laughing, that sounded like a young kid. And the panic we felt in the middle of the aisle, all three of us at the same time without anyone leading the vibe, we got in the car and drove home without talking. Not even the usual, "Bro, what was that?" stuff. Just silence. Like our brains were trying to find a logical explanation and failing. It's almost 4 a.m. now, and I'm sitting here wide awake, still feeling it in my chest. Aftab and Mohi are typing in the group chat like, "I can't sleep." Same. Bro, I swear I heard it. And I want there to be a rational reason. I really do. Maybe the laugh was an animal. Maybe the footsteps were the building settling. Maybe we just freaked each other out. But the timing, the way it all lined up, and then that article, Yeah, I don't know. All I know is none of us want to go back. Not even to prove anything. Because whatever that was, it felt like we weren't welcome. So, ever since our new neighbors moved into the other half of our duplex, I swear my sleep has been wrecked. They've got this little toddler, maybe 2 or 3, and the kid just goes. Like full speed, back and forth, tiny footsteps pounding through the place like a mini freight train. After a couple nights of lying there wide awake, I started hunting for anything that might help. Earplugs didn't cut it. Headphones were annoying. And eventually, I landed on a white noise machine. Figured it'd be the simplest fix. And it was, at first. But then something happened that I still can't fully shake. One night, I'm lying in bed with the machine on, trying to let my brain finally drift off. And suddenly, through the static, it sounded like a little kid's voice. Like a small child, clear as day, softly saying, "Dad, Dad, Dad," over and over. Not loud, not screaming, just tucked inside the noise. I sat straight up, heart racing, and I went to check the house. Checked on my partner, checked on the kids. Everything was normal, everyone asleep, quiet, no TV, no toys, nothing. So I tell myself I imagined it, that I'm overtired, that it's my brain doing that pattern-finding thing it does. I get back into bed. I roll onto my side, and it's like my ears catch something else, like tuning a radio without meaning to. The white noise sounds normal for a bit, and then this other sound starts to slip in. A steady rhythm, like 2 pieces of wood clicking together. Tap, 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 tap. Almost like someone keeping time. It went on long enough that I stopped breathing for a second, just listening, trying to convince myself it was part of the machine. But it didn't feel like it belonged there. It felt deliberate. Then I rolled to my other side, and this time I hear a man's voice, sudden and sharp, like he said a whole word or phrase right into my ear. I couldn't make it out, but it was definitely a voice. And the creepiest part was how it seemed to echo back every few seconds, quieter each time, like a fading repeat. The second I sat up, gone. Just plain static. So I lie back down again, carefully, almost like I'm testing it. And sure enough, as I shift positions, the weirdness comes and goes. Like sitting up resets everything. Like rolling over tunes me into something that isn't supposed to be there. And that's when I remembered. I've had this happen before. Years ago. Different place, different noise machine. Same unsettling feeling of hearing something inside the sound. Like an EVP, but happening live, while I'm fully awake. Now I'm stuck in this awful middle space where half of me is like, this is just your exhausted brain pulling shapes out of static. And the other half of me is like, okay, but why does it change when you move? Why does it sound like voices? Why does it feel like it's trying to land on meaning? And honestly, that's the part that gets under my skin. Not just that I heard it, but the thought that something could be using the noise to get through. Like it's nudging my perception in a way I didn't agree to. So I'm sitting there in the dark thinking, is something trying to communicate with me through this thing? Is that even possible? Or is my brain just doing that creepy audio illusion trick where static becomes words if you listen long enough? Either way, the result is the same. I'm wide awake, unsettled, and staring at the ceiling like I'm the one haunting the room. I think I'm done with the white noise machine. I'm seriously considering going back to headphones even though they're uncomfortable to sleep in. At least headphones feel controlled, like I'm choosing what I'm hearing. If you were me, sleep-deprived, already on edge from the non-stop stomping next door, and then suddenly hearing that in your relaxing noise machine, what would you do?